I believe so.
Facing problems or no?
I believe it's okay. All right, all the guys online, are you able to hear me? Please type something if you can hear me.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I think you're going. Oh, another thing you need to know that this one doesn't have any speakers.
Okay, no problem.
This one, this TV.
Oh, also where did it go?
Doesn't have any speakers at all.
No problem. I'm not gonna be using any audio playing. Yeah.
Paul,
Mm-hmm.
are they going to be using your Wi-Fi network or what?
Yes. I will be sharing that here.
In the group,
Okay.
the WeChat group.
All right.
Huh? It's in my group chat. Yeah, in the group chat. There's at this. You add it? Add it. Can you share it?
All right. For those who are looking for Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi is written as guest. Guest Wi-Fi. Let me know if you're able to see that.
Are you connecting to the screen here? Because
Oh, it's not showing.
yeah. HDMI, that's the one connected, right?
Yeah.
Try here. Or is it your thing that's
Think the cable has a problem?
yeah. Video is working just now, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Think the cable has a problem? Is the Wi-Fi working?
Is the Wi-Fi working? Yes.
Okay. How long is this cable? Guest.
I think it's the. Is it not that?
Is affecting the other monitor?
I don't think it's this cable.
Hopefully, yes. The guest has no password. It's working.
Is yours right? Or is it here? Did you try here?
Okay.
You're recording too, right?
Yeah, the stream, since it's gonna be archived. All right. I'm hoping that we are all good online. If you're online, I would like you to send me a message to see that you can hear me. Welcome, guys. So, first of all, my name is Paul Ernest Kachure. I am from Malawi. I'm a computer science master student here. in mostly I'm in Genco in the lab. I'm in the third year, and I wanted to have this course for introduction to practical programming because when I was an undergrad, right, I was on a path where I would go to class all the time, and I know that it might be straightforward to think that you might go to class, you finish your computer science degree or whatever degree you're doing, and then by the time you're finishing, you'll be ready for work. But it's not that straightforward. Wait, let me just check online. I'm not receiving any. Okay. All right, cool. So the class today is to be able to guide you and give you some stepping stones to say if you really truly want to be able to go into this field and say that I want to be programming or I want to do this for a living, this is the path you should take. Because for me, I had a couple of things that happened in that course of my 4 years that ended up pointing me in the right direction. And I thought that would be good to share that with other people who maybe might be going to class, but then you don't really know what you should be doing to go into that direction. And then this is a 3-hour course, and to be honest, the time is not enough to actually maybe grasp a full application to say like you're going to try to start from scratch, but I will set you up on the right path so that if ever you want to be serious about it, you can be able to continue on that journey, and I'll be available if you want to talk to me about anything. Is that okay? Is that okay? All right, so first of all, I'd like to hear maybe which majors you're coming from. So let me first hear from you.
My name is Ihad.
Yeah.
From Sudan. Computer science.
Computer science. And you?
My name is Ahmed.
Yeah.
I'm a great programmer and still computer science.
Computer science. Which year?
Bachelor.
Which year? Second year, okay. Uh-huh.
My name is Monch. I'm also computer science, second year.
Second year also. All right.
My name is Yaroslav. I'm computer science major at
First year, okay.
My name is David. Doing master in civil engineering.
Okay, and
I'm Ibrahim, computer science also.
computer science also. Okay. All right, so let me see online. Do we have any people messaging? I'm not seeing any messages. I'm hoping. Okay. All right. Would like to join, but I have a desktop. Okay. All right. All right. So the first thing that we'll be talking about is what happens if you just end up going to class and you finish your courses. I really understand for some of you guys are probably studying Chinese, right? Is that correct? You're in the Chinese major. You're learning computer science in Chinese. And some people maybe are learning in English. But I would say that the content usually in the Chinese classes is really a lot, but usually maybe difficult to grasp. You might not be able to have enough time to just maybe go to class and have your own time to practice, because as you're studying, you have so many assignments that you have to do, you have so much catching up that you have to do, and it's really, really hard to be able to find time to practice programming. But if you don't find time to learn programming on your own, you find out that at the end of the day, you have a degree and you go home, and work right now is very, very hard, especially in this AI era. You find companies who are just like, we're going to do everything with AI. But the truth of the matter is that even if you're building your application with AI, you need some expertise to be able to guide those tools, to be able to help you actually deploy something in the real world. There is something as such as like writing a program on your computer, right? Writing a program in the computer and you use it, it works. And there's a difference between you making a program in your computer and having it work, and you actually programming something and using it in the real world. There's a very big difference with you actually having an application and having users use that application, all right? So it's very important that at an early stage, you start practicing your own programming skills and actually deploying that and giving a few people to use, because that chain of you actually programming something, getting feedback, and working on that is actually what is going to make you a good programmer. Most of the things that you even build with AI, you find out that when you deploy them, you'll be having so many issues, and then you actually need the expertise to be able to even optimize and actually fix the issues. Because if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to be having a tough time guiding even AI to help you with those tools. And I would say that for every single field, when everybody says like, oh, the AI is going to take your job, you're not going to be, useful. You find that everybody says that for somebody else's job, but when you're in that field, you realize that those tools are not ready yet, right? Like for me, maybe I'm a programmer, right? But then I look at designers and I'm like, oh, your job is obsolete because I can just go on Google Cloud and make an image. You find that when you're actually in a professional setting, if you have a design that has been set, you have so many specifics and so many revision and notes that if you're going to be doing that AI loop to do all the time, you find out that those designs are not ready. Those technologies are not ready. And everybody thinks that from a field where you're not, that probably that area is obsolete, right? But when you're in the field, you realize that there's a lot that still requires experts who are knowing what they're doing about that. So I hope that you guys have been able to join the group. For those online, let me share. We're going to have a group where we can be able to share some materials. And those who are in that, those who are here can be able to join. Let me share a WeChat QR code for those who are online. Let me get my WeChat running here. The screen is stable, right? So let's make another note here. I don't have PPT notes because I want you guys to listen to me. I don't want you to be reading something. I want you to listen to me and also try to everybody's experiencing there. So WeChat group. So for this WeChat group, I would like you to be interactive, be open. It's not going to be so formal. If you have anything that you want to be able to like communicate, you're learning something, right? Any tips that I'm having, anything that is happening, I will be able to share that. It should just be very informal. And if you have anything that you are facing, we can be talking about it in that group. Okay, so we have some people online as well. All right, great. So let me get that QR code for those who are online. So, all right. So, WeChat group for those who are online. This is the WeChat group. Be able to scan it and join, so that we can be able to communicate there and share all the links that we'll be working on today. Programming. I am gonna share a PDF note of the steps, maybe the main points that I'm speaking about today. So you don't really have to worry about writing anything. I just really like you to listen and then also be able to, guide. So another question, right? Another question. How many of you have done any programming at all? Maybe by raise of hands. How many people have done any programming at all? Any programming, yes. The one in the group, you can do ones if you want. If you have done any programming, 0 if you haven't. Any programming at all? You have done some programming? Have you done some programming? Yes, right. Which languages have you done? C#. C#. So you're already a proficient programmer. What about you? Have you done any programming? Have you done any programming? You're beginning, right? Okay. In class, have you done any programming in class? Yeah. Okay. C++. From class or your own personal projects? Yeah, JavaScript. All right. So, if you're starting in this field, right, the languages that you will experience are a lot, right? And in your path, you have to probably try out almost everything, and then you have to figure out to say, what am I doing, right? What do I want to do with my career? I don't know what's wrong with the screen. What do I want to do with my career? If you are trying to go into hardware, right, there's specific languages that are really good at that area. For example, C. You need low-level languages, right? You find languages that are low-level, they talk to the computer, they talk to the hardware more directly. You find maybe a little bit of upper-level languages that are transcribed into the... This is really distracting. Give me a minute. Let me try to fix the screen. All right. You find some languages that are interpreted into another language that is lower level, right? And then you also find other languages that are maybe interpreted live as it's operating. And based on your experience and based on where you want to go in your career, you have to probably explore a couple of things and then say like, oh, for me, I am gonna be in this field. If you're doing low-level things that are requiring maybe interaction with hardware, let's say integrated circuits, mechanical, you probably have to be dealing with a lot of C and C++, right? C# C and C++, I would say. And if you're dealing with, let's say, your direction is to say, like, I want to be doing AI models, right? Your level, your public direction would best be going into Python, because that's where most of the ecosystem of machine learning is, right? That's a low bar of entry, but also it means a lot of people who are doing science, who are not specifically into coding, can be able to enter that field and be able to contribute in that area. So it means that Python is your journey if you are into making machine learning models or maybe data analysis or something like that. If you are going to be deploying web systems, then your area is going to be the JavaScript, TypeScript, or the web technology. It is very easy for somebody to end up like holding with one language and try to do one language with everything, right? And most times, as a real programmer, you have to make decisions to say like, what am I going to use for the right specific tool, right? You do have trade-offs. You can find ways of doing, let's say, web technology with Python, and it's not a problem. It just means that you have to be aware of the trade-offs, right? You have to be aware of the trade-offs. Like, if I'm using this for that tool, if I'm using this for that job, and it's not meant for that job, or it's not the perfect one for that job, what am I losing, right? You have to have those trade-offs. When I was in undergraduate, at first I was learning in Chinese, so my journey was a little bit difficult, like other people. Maybe let's say you're learning in a different language, and it's tough. You have to probably do a lot of work to be able to also catch up with that language, right? So it was very difficult for me to find time of my own to program. And then I met some friends who had actually inspired me. They were programming maybe from a younger age before me. And I sat down with those guys and I wanted to learn. So we were doing a lot of hardware. And in hardware, we were doing C, right? And I realized like, oh, this is good. It's fine. You can do this. And we were programming integrated circuits, and it was okay. But then I was still searching on where I wanted to go, right? And then later on, we were doing Android development. And Android development, the default language is usually Python or Kotlin, right? It's JavaScript or Kotlin. And you can also spend in that ecosystem and also assess, like, say, like, oh, I want to be doing native. Native means that, like, the language or the code is being directly executed very close to the hardware, right? So I want to be doing native Android. So then you probably be learning Java or you'll be learning Kotlin, right? And then I moved on to say, like, with those guys, we had projects for the web. And then I ended up learning JavaScript. And actually, when I was in the web, I ended up falling in love with JavaScript because I felt that's where I wanted to go. I wanted to do systems that are easily deployable, more accessible, but also more interacting with people. Because if sometimes you're working on your Python code, your C++ code, it says on your computer, right? And it might be doing something functional, but it stays in your computer. I wanted to do systems that people are using. And if you're going to be doing large-scale systems that people are using, the most exposed area for that is the web technology, right? And then I also realized that for JavaScript and TypeScript, there was a large ecosystem that would allow you to use, let's say, the same language to do cross-platform development. With the same knowledge, I could be able to write, let's say, mobile apps with React Native, as he had mentioned, right? And if I wanted to do desktop apps, I could use the same JavaScript and TypeScript to do desktop applications with a framework called Electron. So as a solo person, if you're doing a project, somebody comes to you and the client says that, hey, I want you to build something for me, and you don't have a team, maybe you're alone, right? It's really good for you to capitalize on your skills. And for every single language, for every single aspect, it goes very, very deep, right? The surface level is not enough. If you are dealing and diving into something, it's very good that you refine the knowledge of that thing, because if somebody comes to you and you're working on something, it would be very good that you have extensive knowledge and you've had so much experiences working with that language so that you can be able to solve any problem that comes, right? So I decided to stay in JavaScript because it meant if somebody asks me to say, can you build an application? One, it will be instantly available because it's web. Two, if I need to do the front end, which is what people interact with, and I also need to do the back end, which the logic is, I can be able to do it as a single person because it's the same language, and over time I'm getting very, very good at it, and I can write both front end and back end. And also, if somebody says, I want you to make an application, I can use the same knowledge to do that, right? So this is more of like a choice that you have to take. And truly, even if you do say, like, this is my home ground and I'm going to try to be an expert in this area, whenever any job comes, you still do have to assess to say like, what is the best tools to achieve this, right? So for every application, would say you have mainly 3 parts, right? You have your front end, you have maybe your front end, and which is what people interact with. This can come in many forms. It can come in many forms. Maybe every single aspect of like the web can have its own front end. The phone also, it's still front end. So the things that people interact with. And these things can be done and you can be an expert about this only in this first area, right? And then the other part is the back end. So the back end is more of like the logic, right? If you are doing an application that is not just on the phone alone or on the device alone, you need probably a central point that is holding all the logic, right? If somebody is registering, right, what do we do, right? Do we send an email, right? Do we save something, right? So it means that you need to write the logic. If somebody is creating an account, what are the things that we're doing? So that will probably be backend, right? And then you need to store that data somewhere, right? So you need a storage of your information to say like, okay, this is the logic, but then like, we need to save some things. Like if somebody says I'm using a username and email, you need to save that somewhere, right? So that's why you come your database. And also though in that area, there are people who are just experts about database, right? And you can, on your own level, be like, I'm gonna focus on this. I love data storage and I'm gonna be doing databases, and that's fine. So in all these 3 categories, you can be able to focus on the areas that you love. And for some tools, they allow you to do both. And in some areas, you can be able to choose the best tool for each. And all of these choices come with their own trade-offs. For example, if you're going to be doing your front end, let's say in web, right, and you choose to do HTML, the main standard for web is HTML, right? And then you do your back end, let's say in Java, right? And then you do your back end in SQL. So if you have no knowledge of these, or you have knowledge of one, you might maybe have to ask somebody else to do your backend, because maybe for you don't know Java, or you're not really good in Java. And then you also don't know database, so you probably have to find somebody else, or maybe the backend guy might know database as well. So you find that maybe the truth say like, we need speed, right? So we probably have to use this language because it's very, very fast, but I don't know it. So you can be able to maybe distribute the work to say like, you are doing backend and I am doing front end, right? But the trade-off there is that you probably need more people. Probably the communication channel is longer. Probably every single time they have to do something, then you have to wait for somebody else. Also, it means that maybe your front end might not be in sync with your back end. The back end guy might change some things, and when your user clicks something, it goes to the logic, and the logic has changed, right? So you find all of those trade-offs, but all those decisions have to be made when you're doing, I think if you're in CS, right, you're doing system requirements, right? You have to assess all of those, like, what are the trade-offs, what things are we using? If you're using, for me, in web, the reason why I chose JavaScript is because there are tools that allow you to do both front-end, back-end, and maybe connections to databases in one area, and you can also keep it in one project to a point where if you are using TypeScript, which is like another superset of JavaScript, that it's practically like adding strict rules to the language, you can be able to keep your front end, your back end, and your database in sync. So that if your user interface changes, right, your logic complains to say like, oh, something has changed. Or if you change your back end, your logic, your front end says like, no, we are not going to launch this. There's a problem. There's no syncing, right? And then if you change your database, also your back end, your logic will complain to say like, man, the database, the way we store the data has changed. So you have to modify this before we launch this. Because as I said, you can have your own project in your computer, but launching a project that people are using, you face a whole range of different problems, because now all those things are going to be problems. If something has changed and things are not in line, you're going to have all of these people who are having issues just to use your service. And if you're in the practical world, almost every system that is built involves money, right? You're building a client for a business, and that business, for the business, the system that you're building is a core part of that. So all of those things are things that you have to consider, because at the end of the day, if anybody is hiring you to do any of these projects, or you're doing it for your own business, it means that the success of this system is essential to your business. And if any problems that happen, it means there's a monetary value in loss in whatever issues you're having. Does that make sense? Are we all together at this level? Okay. All right. So let me get some notes here. Or the online people, are we okay? So today, I am gonna be giving you a practical. I'm gonna give you a practical introduction to the web area because that is where I stay every day, and that is my most common strong suit. But the concepts of programming don't specifically don't apply, or commonly applied to a lot of languages. So most of the concepts are the same. If you're transitioning to another language, if you're really good at one language, you'll be able to apply this like, oh, I know how to do this in this area, then I can do the same in that area. Does that make sense? How do we do, like, let's say, if you're in programming, right, variables, right, storing a value, right? How do you do variables in this language? If you're going another way, if you're programming another project in a different language, you just have to know, like, oh, how do I do that in this area? How do I do that in this area? Does that make sense? Right? So any language, for you to really learn programming, I tried learning programming with books before, right? I also tried in class, and it wasn't as effective. I would go to class, and I would learn, and I would pass, but then at the end of the day, when I try to do something, I find out that I don't know anything, right? And I tried to read books, and it wasn't the same. The real way of learning programming that I found that was effective was to do projects, okay? So you have to choose a language that you want to learn, and then you have to choose a project that you really, really love, that you love to do. Something that when you think about it, it's like, if I did this, my friends would be happy. If I did this, I'm gonna show my friends, this would be great. That is a very, very important key because it means you become self-driven, right? You wanna achieve the goal, and you know that there's like, if I finish this, the reward is I'll be able to show or I'll be able to achieve this. And that gives you the self-driven motivation to keep working. Because for you to really learn programming, you're going to need to spend a lot of hours, right? A lot of hours doing something so that you can get really, really good at it, and you face so many different scenarios. And every time you solve a problem, right? Every time you solve a problem, that is now experience. Next time you see a problem similar, you're going to know like, oh, I know how to tackle that, right? And that's how you're gaining experience in whatever the language is. So if you have a really positive passion project, right? And you have a language, you learn the basics of the language. You don't take a 400-page book and say like, I need to finish this, and there's those 600 tutorials before I start, right? You're gonna be in a loop of tutorials and you will never begin, right? You get the most important basics, and then you choose an objective, like a project, and then you just go in. With that, you use that language to try to achieve the objective. And with the basics, you start, and you only check for issues that you have. When you have an issue, that's when you look it up. Because most times you find out that the amount of things that you use in programming, they're probably a finite set. You use the same things over and over, right? The concepts that you use a lot. But if somebody is giving you a book, right? If they had to say like, these are the essentials of programming, they have to fill that book, right? They cannot sell a 16-page book and tell you like, this is a bestseller, take it, right? They have to fill it. So you find out that sometimes if you take the route of like, I have to finish a book before I do start, you're ending up spending so much time in filler content because the book needed to be huge just to be a book, understand? So get the basics, choose an objective, then start. And at every single time, when you find the problem, that's what you search for. And then you end up actually mapping from the book, and you feel that you get the essential things that you need. But if you really want to learn programming, going to 600 tutorials and 700-page books will not be as effective as for my experience that I had when I really wanted to learn programming. I ended up learning programming when I had small objectives that I really wanted to do, and I chose a language that I was not really familiar with and tried to achieve that objective with that language. Does that make sense? Yeah. So let's say we're building, let's say, a system, right? In tech, in the web space, I would say there are two types of maybe systems or websites. You find somebody will hire you today and say like, hey, can you make a website for me, right? And what does it? You ask what does that job do? What does the website do? You find out that in most cases, people just want maybe a system or a website that just talks about their business. So that is just portfolio. It's just text, right? Text and pictures. And then you find another person who will say like, hey, can you do something for me? And you'll be like, what is it? I have a hospital, right? And I want you to be able to pick up appointments, and I want the doctor to be able to say like, this one is doing this, and then he's done next, right? And keep a record of those. Now that was the system. Most of the clients that you meet will never really understand what the objective is, right? They'll just tell you the experience. It's like, this is what I want. And then you have to assess, right? So I'll give you an example. This is a business website, practically, right? But maybe when the person who's asking this will say like, hey, I want to make a website. But if you think about it properly, this is just text and information, right? It's just text and information. It's just about us, right? Contact, team, and all that, right? Another example, maybe let's say this one. Same thing, right? If you have a client who's asking you for content, you have to be able to break down. So if I was to be asked to say like, can you make me a website, and I assess that the only thing I need is information and text, right? The things that I would use would be very different from what I would use for a system. Does that make sense? Another example here is I had somebody who came up to me and they said they had a lot of data from Chinese suppliers, right? And they wanted to have an AI chatbot that would be able to provide that as a service. It's like, I know your supplier for these items. I know your supplier for these items, right? So now if you think about that, they said they wanted a website. Both people came to say they wanted a website. But if you think about that, in this case, this is a system. It's not just a website. It's a system because you have data. You probably need to go maybe process that data, and then you probably store that data, and then you have to interact with an AI model to be able to process that and give it to a user. Does that make sense? But all of these people come to you and say, "What? I want a website." Does that make sense? But this, in a sense, it's a system. It's not just a website. It's a system because it's going to involve me doing front end. It's going to involve me doing some logic, and it's going to involve me storing some data for a database. Does that make sense? We could make this an app. Just change the front end and make that the app, right? It's still a system. So it means that in that area the component has changed, but practically it is still a system. Does that make sense? So if you are starting now, and I would tell you like I would really advise you to start now. I think there's a really huge market for everybody. If you're looking for this kind of jobs, what you have to do is you probably have to start taking up projects, some for free even. Somebody asks you to do a project, do it. That is going to be experience one. Two, it's going to be you gaining that knowledge of what it takes to run something that people are using. Because you can build something on your own, you post on LinkedIn, fine, but you're the only one using it, right? But when you get something that people are using, you're going to get so much feedback and experience than things that you only do for yourself and then you just claim that you have experience. Does that make sense? And then three, you're going to get recommendations, word of mouth. That is the best marketing. If you can complete a project and somebody hears to say like, oh, I did that something for me, right? Next time that person has a friend and they're telling them I need something, they're going to recommend you, right? They're going to recommend you. And when you're finishing your major, right? When you're finishing your major and you're going to be looking for work, I will tell you this. The industry has learned that you can get a 4 GPA but in computer science or software or anything like that, but you don't know anything. They're going to be asking you, can you show us what you have done, right? They're going to be asking you experiences of you actually building systems and running them and having that feedback, because it's possible to pass class 4 GPA on paper, you're good software, but you haven't done anything. So the only way for you to do that is to take up jobs, some for free, no problem. That is the experience. You take that, and then as you go, you get more people. And as you get more people, you're doing systems, and as you're doing those systems, you're maintaining them because people are using them, they're giving you feedback. You're facing issues that the real-world systems face. Does that make sense? Right? And yeah, so you could do so many. One other project that I had here was. This is more same thing, right? Request. Want a website? We have a pageant. This was a pageant in Papua New Guinea, and they wanted a system they wanted a website. They wanted a website for listing the contestants, but also voting for the contestants, right? And that sounds simple. Sounds simple. It's gonna be a website. We'll list people and then we'll vote. But I would tell you this: this, out of all the projects that I've had, right? I thought that like I thought this was like a 1 week type project where it's gonna be simple and everything. But I'll find that this was the most technically challenging project I ended up having, because I had been doing projects and I was having like 200 users, 200 users, but this project was getting 9,000 people a day. And the problems you face, you making your own project on a page on your own PC, and it's like, it works, and reaching a level where it's per second you're having like 10 people per second. The problems you face at that scale are very different from you just running a project on your PC, and you also maybe just using a project with your group circle, So that's why you need to be doing things, and you never know, what ends up blowing up. And from those, when you're meeting those technical challenges, you're going to be solving them one at a time, and that's how you're going to be able to gain experience, right? This ended up having so much complexity because, like, at every single time when people were coming, we had to balance, like, we were trying to also verify the votes, right? So we're sending emails. Even those emails, like, the rates that those emails were going for was so large that I had to optimize on so many levels, right? How this data, I was getting in from the database, I was caching at a certain level, but I still needed to optimize a lot because now the traffic was ridiculous, right? The level of scaling that was needed just to handle a simple website that was just listing participants and voting became very complex because of the amount of people. Welcome. Yeah, how are you? First of all, I would like to know which major are you, and what area are you studying? Mechanical engineering. All right. Any experience in programming?
No, not really. That's why I came here.
All right. Okay. All right. Welcome. All right. So you only get to do that, right? We only get to experience that. These are things that if somebody tells you, right, you will not understand unless you try. You build, and then you get people to use the thing, and then you learn from those challenges, right? You learn from those challenges, and you refine your process and you gain your experience. Okay? Is that okay? So let me get some more notes here. So I'm gonna be updating a little bit of a note that I'm gonna share in the group. For you, there's a WeChat group, if you can be able to join this one. Online, do we have any questions? Any questions so far before I continue? I've been told that I speak too fast. So if there's any part that is moving too fast, please let me know. Is that okay? Question, yes.
I have a question about when you said that when you're starting to learn programming, you should choose a project which you're passionate about and
Yes.
start developing it. But I had some issues when I was trying to develop my first project back in my college.
Yeah.
I was thinking about I didn't even know how I should build. Like, I know the syntaxes of the language.
Yeah.
But I don't really know how to amplify it or the system that I want to use, that I want to build.
Okay.
And it's like you're sitting, you have an idea,
Yeah.
but
Where to
you
start?
don't even know how to plan it.
Okay. All right. We're gonna talk about that, and I'm gonna give you some. So for me, right, today I'm gonna be showing you how to do it on the web, right? But I said every single aspect of this concept is gonna be available for you to apply in any language, as I said, because for every system you have front end, right? You have logic, back end, and then you have database to store your data, right? So I'm gonna give you the web approach because one, that's my domain. I stay there every day, and two, point of entry also is very, very little. You can enter very easily. Everybody has a browser, right? Everybody has a browser, so it means also you can enter in that aspect very easily. But also, as I said, it's also good for you to have projects that you have and then you're showing and you're getting feedback from people. So it means if it's web, instantly you can be able to give somebody and say like, hey, can you check this out? Does that make sense? So after this, when we finish this, I'm gonna actually give you like a quick start to say, right? A quick start for you to have everything that we've talked about here, and then you start tweaking slowly. Does that make sense? All right. So let me give me a minute. Online, do you have any questions online?
I have a question.
Yes.
The last red, yellow, black color, you created?
Yes. All of the projects I'm showing here are yes.
You said 11,000 people every day recently?
9,000 people every day.
9,000.
Yes.
Did you do advertisement or?
No. So the thing was that, like, as I said, this was a pageant for a province in Papua New Guinea. So they were doing like Miss Papua New Guinea, but in regions, right? So one of the regions, right? Somebody, because I had done projects for them, they were recommended, they were looking for a website for this, and then they were like, oh, I know that person because I did a project for them. So then they had me to do this for the province. So because it was a province thing, the whole province was trying to vote for that event. That's where like the surge in traffic came, because the application area was already there, the users were already there. I also did not expect that it would go that crazy, but yeah, that was the setting of that application. Make sense? Yes.
So you end up saying that you encountered a problem with so many subscription, right? Many people were advocating this method.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that?
How to deal with that? How
Or did you?
did I deal with that? Okay.
Were you working alone or you?
For this one, I was alone on this one. Yeah. Actually, I think I have a whole PDF on my analysis for that. Anyways, so if you're having a system and it's online, we said we have three things, right? Front end, back end, and database, right? So if your front end, let's say it's a mobile app, you don't have to store it anywhere, right? It's an application. You can download it somewhere and then use it on your phone. It stays on your phone, right? If it's web, you need a hosting provider. Does that make sense? Either you're gonna have, okay, essentially you're gonna need a computer online that people are talking to access your system. Does that make sense? Like any website that exists, it's somebody's computer sitting there just holding your website, and then people access that. Because for most situations, if you're using your phone, right, and you're in a normal setting like this, nobody can really directly access your device, right? There's something called IP forwarding. You can request for it. You say like, you can go to your mobile provider and say like, I want my PC accessible from the internet, right? But that's not something that everybody needs, right? And probably also complicated to apply for. So there are internet providers who have already done everything for you, and you just go and keep your system there, and then people now talk to that website. Does that make sense? And all of these things, like the website links, right? It's an international standard that has been set where you say, I buy a name, and then when I buy the name, I point to say like, my website, this is my website name, and this website name is pointing to this computer, right? Now, for people who are into hosting, that's a whole also other deeper area that you can go into, right? Yeah. So if my system, the front part is a website, I need to go find somebody who has a computer, and in most cases, it's not free because those computers need money, so you have to pay for somebody to host your computer. So you find all these people, probably on YouTube you have seen Hostinger, right? GoDaddy and all these people. They will allow you to buy a name and also buy you a server, to buy a space to store your website. Does that make sense? And you, on your own, you can also not just store your website, you can also buy your own computer online if you want, and then do all the technical things to set it up. Some of those people who provide hosting services, it means they've already done the technical setup, right? You just come, put your website, and then you're done. Same thing for the logic. If I have a video player, let's say I use VOC, right? VOC in its own, it's complicated, it's a system, but it doesn't need to talk to the internet, right? So it means the logic can stay within the application. But if you're using an application that needs to talk to the, let's say the business, right? Or it needs to interact with other people, you need a central point, right? So your logic also means needs to stay online as well. So you need to find another hosting provider or the same hosting provider to keep your logic, because then everybody needs to talk to that logic to get the expected behavior. Does that make sense? Same thing for database. There are also people who just sell database. They say like, we sell database. And you can either buy that, or maybe same provider maybe provides both, hosting your front end code, your back end code, and also your database. So now all of these now are choices. Does that make sense? So in the application that we're talking about here, we had multiple, you say bottlenecks. Bottlenecks, when I say bottlenecks, I mean like you have a flood of people coming, or anything, input of anything, right? But there's a small thing that is stopping something to proceed the way it's supposed to, right? So in this case, the database was traffic. If you're having 9,000 people interact with your website, one interaction from a website, let's say I come here, right? And I click this. When I do this, we code the database to get like how many workshops are there, right? We also got the page. We also probably checked, are you logged in or not? So one interaction on the site probably made 3 requests to my system. Does that make sense? And the hosting provider that I was having counts those requests. So they give me a budget, let's say, of 1 million requests per month for free. After that, I have to pay, for example, right? So it means if I have 9,000 people and every single person goes, clicks here, clicks there, clicks here, and initially when I was doing my design, every single interaction or an average interaction that I was having for somebody was 20 calls, right, to the database. It means now that 1 million is starting to look small, right? Because now this exponential math. If 9,000 people are coming and all of them are having 20,000 requests to my system, I am finishing up that 1 million requests, budget. Does that make sense? So it means now if I see that, because it means if I'm optimizing for all of this, this is adding complexity, right, to the system. I have to go like, how do I make sure that I'm optimizing the request so that one person, instead of 20 requests, they're doing 10 requests or 5 requests. Because it's probably easier for me just to waste, to be like, here, I'm going to call. But if I need to budget, the optimization needs to happen. I need to sit down and be like, how can I make sure that I'm using the least requests? And that's going to be complex. I'm going to have to sit down, look at my system, be like, where can we save? Does that make sense? So it meant on the first aspect, for the request, I had to sit down, look at my system. I had built it. It was fine. I've built many systems before. They were not reaching that level of scale, right? So it meant the standard of optimization that I was starting with with the time given, right, wasn't as maximized. But now we have seen that the thing has blown up. So therefore, with the constraints of money and budget, I have to optimize, right? So it meant the first level I have to do is how many requests can I reduce for one user? So now I have to go in my system and be like, okay, where can we save some calls? Or where can we bundle some calls? Does that make sense? Does it make sense? Same thing for database, right? We are probably from the logic, maybe you're calling the database multiple times, but the database provider was a different one. They were also having their own budget they had given me with the money. So it means I have to now optimize that. And another fourth thing that I didn't even think about, you think emails are cheap, right? You send emails, everybody, like, when you want something free, you just say service by email. But if you are having 9,000 people a day and all of those people need a verification to enter, it means, one, the provider for your email service is being bombarded by 1,000 requests, in a short period of time just to request for a verification email, right? So it means the current provider I was using, they had a limit. I had never reached that limit, like per minute, because this had never happened to me. So now I had to move providers because they're like, hey, whatever you're doing, we cannot handle this. So it meant even some of the people who were hitting those email requests, it was now reaching the limit, and then everybody who reaches when it's limited, it was failing. So now they try to request for verification, it fails, and then what do? They do it again. So now you're having 100 or 200 people per hour, all applying for verification, but because the limit is done, it fails, they do it again, and now the graph is going, you get the point? So now I have to go like, okay, I have to find a new provider, and then in that new provider, I need to find the range, and in that range, I probably also have to optimize for the budget. Does that make sense? So it's like that. You find a system, when you make it, you solve the issues as that's why it's called software engineering. Some people say like web design or system design or computer science is not engineering. That is not true. When you're designing your system, that is engineering. You have to optimize. You have to optimize and do decisions that allow your system to be effective. Does that make sense? So that's just an example of the issues that I faced from that project, because this was, I never really experienced that. But as we said, you choose a language that you're looking for, you choose a project, and you get the basics and you go in. You solve a problem at a time, because as you say, the issues that I faced, if I was reading a 700-page book, probably they would have never talked about that in that book, because that was not the area, right? But books will usually do general, because they have to fill a book, and practical experience will be the best for you to learn, because you learn in the domain you're doing, you learn the problems that you actually commonly face, and when you solve them, next time you see them, you know what to do. Make sense? Yeah. So I think a recap for you, right? The introduction. I was saying that the best way to learn programming is not to read a book or do 600 tutorials, is to explore, right, different possible languages, and you learn to say, like, this language is good for this, or this language or this approach is good for this, and this language is good for this, and then you find what you want to do, right? And then you say, like, okay, I want to learn this language, and then you choose a project that is dear to your heart, a passionate project, and then you say, with my basics, I'm gonna start this project, and now you start, you research per challenge, right? You research per challenge. When you hit the roadblock, that's when you go out to search, because otherwise, if you try to finish a 700 book, that was just filled for the sake of being a book, and another tutorials, which are a lot, you might never start, because then you're having this tutorial cycle that never finishes. So, all right, so choose a language that you want to do based on your goals, choose a project, then begin, and then you search when you need, search when you need, right? The programming world, I think long time ago, I'm even saying long time ago, but people who, if you have ever Googled any programming language, any programming problem, you find a thing called Stack Overflow, right? And now it's, apparently there's even a graph of it. It's not, the usage is not there anymore, because there's ChatGPT now, right? But a long time ago, that was a space where if you have any problem, you Google it, you find there. Because programming as well, another note to make, programming doesn't, you don't have to memorize anything, right? Some people will tell you, like, oh, they get worried. They say, like, if I'm doing programming, how am I going to remember all of these things, right? You just have to know the basics, and you can search on the go. You don't have to cram that in your mind, because even if you memorize or know every single language, later on you might be doing a project in another language, and you come back, you will forget, and it doesn't matter. If you know the main concepts, you can always recap, because you know the fundamentals that is required to do the system. Does that make sense? Yeah. So for you were talking about how to get started, right? So if you have these three components, right, it means that if you're getting started, you need to know where you're gonna keep all of these things for starters. If it's a mobile application, it means that you're gonna write a mobile application, and at the end of the day, right, the beginning is you make the app and you find a way to store it and share it. You can either go on Google Play or Apple Store to store it, or you can share the installable application. Does that make sense? And then for your logic, if that application essentially does not need to talk to anybody, it means you're done there. You can make sure everything and all the logic is packed in that, right? If it's going to be talking to another interface or another provider, right, who is storing your logic, then it means that you also need to work on that and figure out how to store it there, and then figure out how to have your front end talk to your back end. Does that make sense? And then from there too, you need to find out how to, for your backend to talk to your database wherever you're gonna keep it. Does that make sense? Okay, so yeah.
After creating the website, you faced problems only related to the database?
As I said, for that website, it was requests on the front end, right? Requests on the database, and also emails for that specific project. But there are many types of projects. Many types of projects. Yes.
Just a short answer. So since you are doing JavaScript,
Yeah.
are you also doing how do you call it?
Machine learning,
No, for security.
cybersecurity.
Cybersecurity.
Now, the concept of security applies to any area, even hardware. So security concepts are more of a consistent practice in any application that you're doing. So you can do network like security fundamentals, but in whatever area you're doing, you have to be learning what are the standard security practices in that area. So it would be very difficult to just learn security and then you cannot apply it if you don't know what the ways of applying it are in the area that you're doing. Does that make sense? In my sense, if I'm doing security, right, in web applications, there are specific things that I need to be looking out for. One, the tools I'm using to build, right? You get infections from the packages. This is normal. So it means every time I have to subscribe, I actually have alerts to say like, let's do GitHub. To say like, this week, the things you're using in your systems are how somebody has found a backdoor. Go and fix them, or else. Problems for you. Does that make sense? On the data side, when I am building my system, I have to make sure that, one, your data, right, Ankit's data is not being accessible by his data. So that has to be now part of the system design, right? Make sure that when somebody calls that data, I have to make sure that it's Ankit, and I have to make sure that he doesn't get Ankit's data. Does that make sense? So security concepts per se, let's say for example, this one. I have to subscribe. You see this? I have 13 security notices to say like, these are the things that you should be looking forward. You have to fix them. Does that make sense? So in security is a constant, and they will tell you that no system is 100% secure. It can be today, but not tomorrow. Even if you don't change anything, because we are all programmers. When you write something, the logic sounds straightforward, but later on somebody will find out that you have missed a certain use case, right? You wrote logic to say like, oh, this is supposed to work like this, but you have not thought of all the possibilities. And when you have put something online, you should be ready. There will be people who will be trying to poke your thing to break it. So security is a constant practice, and in whatever field you have to learn, okay, what are the most important things in this aspect of security, and how do I apply them in a specific project with a specific tools that you're using? Does that make sense? So you can learn security generally, but the only way to apply it is for you to actually learn how to take those principles into action in the tools that you're using for that system. Does that make sense? So for me in the web, I have to subscribe to these things because whenever there's a vulnerability, there are researchers, right, who are just busy poking, or people who are whistleblowing and say like, oh, there are people who found backdoors and I have just realized that there's a potential area here. So everybody who's using this, go and fix it because this means your system might be in risk. Does that make sense? And that goes to another concept. Never think that when you build a system once for people, it's going to be like that forever. There is something called maintenance. Maintenance is in this aspect. Versions of things you're using change, right? There will be issues. So if somebody tells you, like, build me something, it's going to be one time. It's going to be fine. You build it and then that's it. It's not true. It's not true. There will be problems. There will be issues that people face. There will be scenarios that you haven't thought about that will happen in that scenario. So you have to account the cost for that, right? If you're somebody hires you to say, like, can you do this for me? Factor in that aspect. Like, do I have the time? Or if we are going to be doing this long term and I'm going to be coming back to fix your things, what is the arrangement? Does that make sense? Because for every single system, as technology goes, what worked 20 years ago it might not be working now. Or it might be working now, but with a lot of holes that can be like infiltrated. If you download today, I saw a video on YouTube one time. Somebody just installed Windows XP from scratch, nothing, just put it on the internet like that. And in 1 hour, there were already, infections. You know why? Because over time, people, poke around your system and they find out, oh, I can bend this like this, I can bend that like this. So it means that software, long term, right, you have to maintain it. That's why at the end of the day, you find notices. I heard Apple announce that they're no longer supporting iPhone 11. You know why? They have 7 versions that they have to constantly be updating for them to still be functioning properly. Does that make sense? So you cannot indefinitely make something and expect it to work forever. If it does involve people, if it does involve business, you should know that there's a cost of keeping that alive and keeping it secure and also functional with the ever-changing technology. Cool? So yeah, so now I would say that you shouldn't be like afraid of this, okay? Shouldn't be afraid of this. As I said, in the specific area that you're doing, as you're going, you learn the best practices. So you don't have to go out there and be like, hey, for me to begin, I'm afraid I need to go do a security course. No, as you're going in the field, right, you're learning like best practices. Even if you're going to tell you when you're doing this, this is in standard how we do things. Does it make sense? And as you learn, you realize, oh, this is why, right? Oh, this is why, right? Does that make sense? And I repeat in program, you shouldn't be feeling like I need to complete these things before I can begin. That's the mistake. You will never start. There will always be something you don't know. You need to begin and solve a problem at a time. Cool? Good? All right. Mechanical, you do a hardware, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what do you mean hardware.
Hardware, like if you're doing mechanical, like robotics, you're probably doing sensors and motors and those kind of things.
No, for me it's more like a production line.
Production line.
Yeah.
So still hardware, but bigger scale.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Just like optimizing the production line.
Optimizing the production line. All right. Question?
Have you faced cybersecurity problems?
Have I what security problems?
Yeah.
Have I faced security problems? Serious ones, maybe not yet, because I am constantly also like looking at this and patching because I don't want to be. Nobody wants to be in that scenario, right? But if you build a system for you, you know sometimes like my thing. If somebody like I'm working, it's big. If somebody came this way, yeah. So I personally also have a constant list of things that I have to be looking out for. But personally, I don't. I am very conscious about the security thing to a point where like even in my YouTube feed, I'm subscribed to people who are always talking about this. So if there's a problem, I want to know about it because I know what happens when something is poked. But I'll tell you this: like when I was beginning in the start, the guy who was mentoring me, I made a chat application and I was like, hey, come look at it, and then he broke it in like 1 minute. He was able to see everybody's messages from like just changing something because he understands how the thing works, right? So as I said, you don't have to worry about all those things. As your time goes, you learn, right? You learn. You back up, right? You keep copies. There are practices that you can be able to read about or ask about or subscribe to, and then constantly you're doing. Security is a constant thing that you have to be keeping at the back of your mind at every step. Right? So far, and yeah, gracefully, I have not faced any major security issue, and I hope that it maintains like that. But nobody's ever safe, right? Nobody's ever safe. You find every single big company, Yahoo, Google, they've had security breaches. Right? That's why they ask you, please change your password. Please don't use the same password everywhere because if somebody ends up like compromising that, then you are using the same account everywhere. They're just gonna use your credentials, right? Nobody's 100% safe. So you have to always be keeping measures, always be on the lookout for what might happen. Okay? And for any big or any situation that happens, it's not a judgment to your engineering level. If you have issues, it doesn't mean no, anybody's vulnerable. Big and small people face security vulnerabilities. You just have to constantly be security conscious, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so one more question. Okay.
Last project that you did bring you any benefit except experience?
Yeah, I was supposed to graduate in July, but I extended because I am focusing on doing the software thing as a business. I want to see if I can be able to do this full time, and so far I'm still here, and my upkeep and survival here has been just doing this. So there is monetary value to that, and currently I have a team at home of about 6 people who like we're all now like trying to start something just to be doing this full time. So yes, there is other benefits besides experience, monetary. If you can focus on this, and if you can be serious in this business, there is money, and if you've cultivated that well enough, it could be something that you're doing full time. Does that make sense? Yeah. Huh? Oh, pricing also, I think that is a very good question. when I was beginning, I used to, even that curve, right, of doing things for free, I was in that phase for a long time. And my father and even my mentor would tell me, like, you should learn to charge. And actually, that is a good question. It's sort of straightforward, right? You might be afraid to charge, or so you might be in that loop where you're just doing charity work, you know, just charity work. There is a balance, and that takes time maybe to learn. For some people, it's easier. For some, it's harder. For some, they come in too soon, right? If you have no experience or you don't have any clientele, it's ridiculous for you to just be going there saying 6,000, 7,000, right? Right? You need to be able to pace, one, based on your track record of delivery, but also your availability of work. You need work. Sometimes you might have to go low because you need the work, right? And in the beginning, you might need to do a few free things. And I would recommend you, every single time, do 1 or 3 free things, because that's where you get experience. And from the experience, you're able to, if somebody comes to tell you and they're going to charge you money, because you have that experience, you can confidently charge, knowing that you will deliver. Does that make sense? So, but at some point, you have to learn how to calculate. The thing that took me time to evaluate and also realize, I used to do things, and my roommate, you know, my roommate was like doing gigs and used to say work. I would be programming and I would never think that this is work, because I was doing this for fun, right? But time is valuable, and that's what you should learn, right? Your time, what you could be doing with your time, is very, very valuable. So if somebody gives you a project, assess how much time is this going to take me? What other things could I be doing in this period? Do I need to pay for certain services? Do I need to involve other people, right? And then make an amount that for you is worth saying, like, if I spend 1 week, 2 weeks doing this, right, and I'm not going to do anything else with this amount of money, I'm okay with. Does that make sense? If you're charging somebody and you feel like, but then, like, I'd rather be doing something else, then you have not reached that. It's not a good balance. It needs to be fair enough for you to say, like, I'm going to leave everything I'm doing. This is worth it. Does that make sense? And your time is really valuable. So don't end up making small charges to say, like, I'm going to be available the whole year. No, that's not okay, right? And as I said, systems require constant maintenance. So be like, I'm going to do this. It's going to be functional, production ready here. If you need me anymore, let's talk about it when you need me. Does that make sense? Like that. And if you're going to be involving multiple people and you have a team and you're going to know, like, John or Jack is going to be part of this, you should factor in, like, what composition is going to be worth for them to sit down and just do this. Does that make sense? If you're doing something that's part-time, then you can charge part-time wise. It's like, it's going to be done, but maybe in 2 months I'll be doing it on the side, because I also need to be doing other things to balance me surviving. Like, I have other things to be doing. So your time is valuable. And 2, always, when you're charging, always make sure that at the end of the day, you're comfortable to say, like, yeah, this is worth for me to stop everything and do this. That's your balance. And then after that, if now you've gained that traction, if you want beyond that, you can add if you want extra. That's up to you, because now you're earning value. Your brand, you're growing a brand, you're building things, right? So now then that would be extra margin. But be fair. Sometimes greedy is not a good thing. If you also become, like, greedy and every time somebody asks you for something, you're always mentioning big numbers, people will never hire you, right? So you need to be able to open dialogue, right? Say, like, this is my pitch. If you have any customer tell you, this is my budget, I'll really be great. If anything happens, you can make arrangements. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Then how do you know how the market is charging? Because charges are really regional. For instance, China, Africa, the charges will be different, times will be different. How do you know if you're a first timer as to what is the different price, how much price?
So there are places you can look at. For example, right, in Malawi, I'm from Malawi, right? I can just go on Google and say, like, well, Malawi web development, and then I'll go and I check what other people are doing. For example, you can just go on Google, be like, Malawi web design. You find some other websites and you find prices. That's your baseline, right? So compare 2 or 3. Here too, you can find people who are doing, and then you assess how much are you charging. But at the end of the day, I would advise you should have your own pricing. It should be a level where for you say, like, this is worth it, and if it's lower than the market standard, it's still okay. You know why? Because it means they'll come to you because you have found a fair ground for yourself. Does that make sense? And it was always good actually to go lower than market value. Make sure that the math makes sense though. because it means now you have a low balance. You have an abundant amount of work, but also you have a reason for somebody to also come to you, right? But at the end of the day, when you do one job and then you find out like that was not worth it, you bump it up because you know like the stress I went doing this is not worth it. I need to increase. So you charge slowly. Is it okay? Yeah. Any other questions? Wait, online. I hope I'm not forsaking those online. Ooh. Okay. I had a small project that I wanted to finish. I finished the front end and the design, but I got stuck on the back end and database. Could you explain the process of integrating API calls from the front end to the back end and how data flows from the database to the front end and vice versa via the APIs? All right. Okay. So, okay, before we do that, I would like to just do a simple exercise. Do you know any application and then that you're interested in how it works, and then we can do it like an educated guess of how that system works? Yes, like something that you use and you're like, this is great, I love this. I would like to know how does it work? Huh? Gemini, AI. Okay, we can talk about this. Because I am actually, most of my work these days is, I've been doing this. We're building like an AI for, yes, for researchers. And in this area, I dove into this like a year ago because the first one I was doing was, I think it was a pre-version of this one. The first one was about mining data. So there was a client who wanted, I think that one is like AI, I think. Yeah, the client wanted, an AI that talks about they have a company for mining, and they wanted an AI that consolidates all their knowledge about the mining for their clients, right? So they have a lot of data like from mining in Nigeria, and in that field there are people who constantly asking them, how do we get started? What are the regulations? What are all these things? So they wanted the chatbot that just uses all that data to process that, right? And then at the end of the day, after I finished that one, the same company hired me to do this one, which was now for the suppliers, right? And then later on, I was doing this one alongside the same time. It was an AI for recommending admissions, but then it has grown into a much bigger thing. Now there's a ton more things inside just for students. So we're building this for researchers, right? But also actually recently, I did this one last week. This one now I realized that domain is mostly for postgrads, right? But then most undergrads are probably preparing for exams and they're writing research, right? So I ended up doing this for someone who was requesting me to make an AI. They were using ChatGPT to prepare for an exam, and then they uploaded so many documents. By the end of the day, the answers they were getting were so degraded to a point where like they would even argue with it. That's not true. That page doesn't say this, and then it would be confident to be saying, no, that's not true. And then after giving it evidence, it was like, oh, I'm sorry, you're correct. That was a mistake. Blah, blah, blah. So like I can understand how that happened, and I had to make this to solve for them. But I realized that actually there are many people who are probably preparing for exams as well. So this is another tool also for like an AI conversation thing that is meant for exam preparation. Yeah, I'm into the AI academia too. So like this is like an application for preparing for exam. So what you do is you upload the documents that you're studying for, and then from there you can like say this is the main book I'm studying, and this is a framework, and this is the sample exams, right? And then you can have like a general chat here where you can talk to it, and then it references any of those books, and you can click and it opens the book to the page where it's referencing, right? And huh?
Is it just like Notebook LM?
I have not used Notebook LM. But in this one, you can also, I have not used Notebook LM, but I've not used Notebook LM, so I'm not really sure. Yeah, but this one, now you can also generate a syllabus from the books you have uploaded. you can generate a study plan. So like, this is the study plan, and then it will generate your study plan. So like, okay, these are the chapters you should be studying in. These are the parts of the book you should read. And then if you also want to be studying with it with YouTube, you can add YouTube videos. And later on, the person who was requesting this initially was like, can we get context from the videos? And which is, later on, I'm probably going to add that. We can get that from the subtitles, right? The transcript. So yeah, and then you use it using the study mode. So in the study mode, you just go in, you read the objectives, right? You watch any YouTube videos, if there are any that you have been adding for the study session, and then you read from the books, and then you can like switch between the books and the content, and you can talk to the AI about the book you're reading or the parts you're reading. And then after that, you can take an exam. So it will generate an exam from the chapter and all the books plus the reading materials. And then you can, yeah, retake the exam and then fail because it's accounting and I don't know accounting. Yeah. So this would be good. This is my interpretation of like, if I'm preparing for an exam, this is what I want. Because if you do like ChatGPT, right, you say like, make me a syllabus, you have to copy that, put it in text, and then later on as you're going, you still have to try to bring that into context. So I find that for AI tools, general tools are okay, but they end up having a bottleneck if you're having, like the best tools that you get are specific. Like now, AI tools are there, AI models are there, right? But specific products made for an intentional direction are the best, most effective tools because now you can bring the best of everything, right? And also, general just conversation AI isn't so good than, for me, in my experience working with this, I find that tools that work fine without AI and then adding AI on top are more effective than you just being in a chat conversation and being, you find out that if you're actually trying to use that to work, it's not the best effective. And you get frustrated, you be like, but that thing, you know, you get the point? But you should have a tool, it works independent, and then if you augment AI, you get more usability. So you can use the tool, and then you can also use AI if you want, interchangeably, but it shouldn't just be a chat conversation full time. You find that it's frustrating when you want to fine-tune details, but also concentrate on a specific objective. Not necessarily true. Okay. Actually, I think this is a deep topic, and I love this topic a lot about AI. I'm going to have a whole talk. Maybe we'll talk, I'll still answer a question on how it works. But next week, actually, we're having another talk. My last talk will be next week. It is just about AI. Yeah, so like if you want to know like the fundamentals of like how those things work, how do you make products with AI? How do you use it for research? Actually, the talk is mostly about like research, but I will talk just only about AI in the next conversation. Is that okay? Yeah. So maybe I can briefly explain to you there, but now if I start talking about it, I'm going to get too excited and then we need, today, at the end of the day, I want to leave you in a way that you can start a system and then from there you can go on. Is that okay? And we're having 1 hour, 30 minutes left, and there's a lot to cover. Last question. Yes. Well, not JavaScript, but TypeScript. The reason why, as I told you, is the same. At some point, after exploring all the languages, I found that this was my home ground. And I can be able to do many things with it. I can do front end, back end, right? Database with the same language. I can also switch. I also have like desktop apps, same language. So the advantage is this, as I said, everything goes very deep, right? If now you're getting really good at the tool, it means that in any scenario, you have so much experience with it, you can be able to use it well enough. This is a desktop application, right? But it's also written in the same language. But because I stay in this language every day, I am very good at that language. Does that make sense? So at some point, for you and still, if another project comes and JavaScript and TypeScript isn't the right tool for it, I will not use that. But for the use cases that I am, where most of my work is building systems and most of them are web, desktop, or mobile, I find that that tool gives me a good balance because alone as one person, I can do everything with a short amount of time, with less back and forth, right? And also from my experience of facing so many issues in the same language, I know I have had a large scope of issues that give me a good experience to tackle anything, right? So yeah, so like now, this is a desktop application and still using the same technology. Does that make sense?
This is your AI website?
No, this is an app to link me to all my projects. Does that make sense? Yeah. But the AI, yeah, this AI is, actually this is live. You can use it if you want. You can give it a shot. For now. For now, it's free. The thing is, technology, especially systems too, right? You need to go in it's called a beta phase. You've heard beta, right? Something. It's in beta phase, right? There's alpha. Alpha is the stage of the project where you're testing it internally. Just you guys are testing it. Beta is when you have opened it to a small group of people, right? And then they're testing it because after you finish all your scenarios, surely there will be issues that other people you haven't thought about, other people face, and then they'll give feedback. And that feedback is very important because if you have there are scenarios and cases in history where people launch something, it's all ready, and then everybody just says, that is horrible, right? And it might not reflect the full amount of work and engineering that has gone into it, but it just means it was not polished. And I will tell you this from my experience, it is never good to launch something that is not ready. Because once somebody faces an issue with it and they're not happy, they're never coming back. They have a bad experience, they never come back. So anytime you're building systems, make sure that if you're launching, it's refined, right? You go through the whole process of using, right? Anything that annoys you, fix it, right? Otherwise, the moment you do that, any part that is a problem or is annoying, somebody's gonna do that and they're gonna get frustrated and they'll never come back, right? So that's why software takes time. You might think that like somebody might tell you, do this, it's only this, you can do it in 2 days. It's not like that. Once you start finishing it and then you start refining, you find out that some problems, it's faster to get the base, but now to refine takes time, right? Yes. Yes. Yeah. So, but I have a team. It's not just me. I have a team of guys. And we have a ton of things, and we have so many plans that we would like to do, because as I said, that I want to do this full time, right? And same thing, right? Everybody's on a journey. Everybody learning from everything, and yeah. So yeah, this is our team, and yeah. So it's not just me. It's a lot more people, and I think we have 2 more guys who are on this page who are adding, because now, ever since I started doing this full time, there's more work than I can handle. So need more people, right? So that's the only way you grow. Start taking up work, and as time goes, you find out, maybe it's too much for me. Maybe this could be a thing that I could do, and don't have to specifically look for a job. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now let me answer this question. How do we actually link it with library or tools to use? Is just my question. Okay, is it Bali's? Can you first tell me what languages you're using for your back end and your front end? And we can talk about this. So let's do a small diagram here. So now this is just systems, right? As I said, you have these 3 things. So this is like back end, and this is like front end. And then this is like database. So based on your technology stack, right? Based on your technology things that you have chosen to build your thing, your connections between the things might be all different, right? In some cases, you might never have to face all of this, but if you're building a system that people use, you might have to interact with this. So as he's asking, like, how do you integrate API calls from front end to back end? So an API is called an application, I think, programming interface, if I'm not sure about the P. But the idea is when you have your back-end logic, right, you need doorways for somebody, your application or somebody else, to talk to your back-end. These are like, like legalized ways. Somebody gets to find ways to access it, but you need official backdoors to access your system, your logic. So that one is called an API, where you say this is the backdoor, and for anybody coming here, these are the rules of how you use it. Does that make sense? So there are different design choices. Some people do this. They talk to the backend. They talk to the arrow. They do this, right? And in most cases, for some, this is a design choice that other people do. And this is very common for people who use Firebase, right? People who use Firebase for their mobile applications, the front end, their application or website talks directly to their data, okay? And this is okay, but in system design, it has its problems. It has its problems. Since the database, you might not have all the right specifications or protocols or flexibility to define the, let's say what, separation of concerns, right? Databases are not meant to have a lot of logic, right? So you'd be constrained. And also, if you have any issues here, there's no gatekeeper if you have problems with your database access or Ankit is able, you might have a very likely possibility that you can easily shoot yourself in the foot and have Ankit access his data because you're just talking straight to the database. But this is a design choice and a design paradigm that exists, right? People are using Firebase, Supabase too sometimes. You can do this as a choice, right? The standard way to do it is you find a way to connect your front end to your back end. This arrows, I need both this side, okay, like that. And then you need this to do this. Because if you're writing a back end by design, you have all the flexibility and standard in any choice, in any like mature technology that I've used to do back end, to say like, okay, these are the rules, this is what we do, this is the logic. We allow you to go get the data from the database. This is really Ankit, right? And then you send it to the front end, okay? So for Bally's, yeah, for you, I really need your technology stack to be able to guide you on that. But I will show an example of this, a practical example of this. So this is the normal way. So this front end can be an app, can be mobile, anything like that. Is that okay? So this is the way you should be thinking about it. And so today, I will be showing you more of a quick start, like a personal quick start that I like using. It's a bunch of things set in a tool that allows you to set everything up so that you can just get going, right? And then we'll talk about the things inside, because if each and every aspect, as we said, gets very deep in every area, right? But I want you guys to start. I don't want you to spend so much time like preparing, and then you're never getting to start, okay? So I'm going to introduce you to something called the T3 stack. I don't know if any of you guys would do computer science. If you should have ever seen this guy called Theo, right? So him and his team, they made this. Does the Moravian logo have something to do with the watchdogs? No. No. All right, so this is the T3 stack. The T3 stack, what it does is, it's a project in TypeScript or JavaScript that makes all of these choices for us already. Like they set everything up. What are we going to use for front end? Already configured, ready, just for you to start working. What are we going to use for back end? Already set. Does it make sense? What are we going to use for database? Already set. Okay? And then we just get into it. So, as I said, all of these topics you can go into deep, but I want you guys to get started. So this is what I'm gonna be introducing to you guys. But you will need a few things to begin this, okay? The first thing is your code editor. So if you're writing any code, you can use Notepad if you want, but there are specified tools like VS Code that are specified intentionally for programmers, right? They help you like highlight things, they help you, the program itself understands that what we're doing here is code, meaning that there are all sorts of tools and all sorts of things that allow you to do that job better. Does that make sense? So you're gonna need VS Code. The second thing is you're gonna need the JavaScript runtime, something that processes that JavaScript, okay? That language that we've chosen. The good thing about it is you can write JavaScript in any browser. If you just right click here and then say inspect, right? And you go here for console, you can write JavaScript in any browser. So it means by default, anybody who has a browser has something that can run and process JavaScript. On any browser, right click and click inspect here. Or you press F12. Okay? So you can be able to write JavaScript in here. Does that make sense? So what we need here, the first thing is I need you guys to get VS Code. Those who have computers, if you already have VS Code, let me know. So VS Code, and I will start sharing the links. Can you share the links? Yes, I will do that. So first thing is everybody gets VS Code is our default editor. If you already have it, that's great. So this is the link for VS Code. I will be sharing that in the programmers group. So say one, VS Code, and there we go. Okay, great. If you have VS Code already, that's great. I've sent the link in the group. I really hope that you're in the WeChat group. And then the next thing that we need is Node. So Node.js. So Node.js is our way of processing and running JavaScript. If you're running, let's say C, right? You need something like GCC to compile your code. So for every single language, you have to find out like what do we need to run this? What do we need to make use of this code to become something, right? Useful, right? So for us, since we'll be learning with JavaScript, because I want you guys to learn all these aspects quickly, and also at the end of the day, you can be able to have an application that you can share with me, with anybody, be like, hey, I built this, right? So Node, get Node for your JavaScript runtime. So Node.js, so this is JavaScript runtime. Sure. So VS Code is an editor. If you want to use any editor, you are very welcome to use any editor. The whole point here is we should be able to write and modify text. So even if you want to use Notepad, that's fine. Okay. If you have WebStorm, that's great. All right. So I think let me maybe modify this to say recall. Let me make this text editor. So one text or code editor. If you have any other code editor, you're very welcome. This is just the one I use. Another thing, if you are going to be programming seriously and long term, I don't know if you guys have ever seen GitHub, right? Do you know what it is? GitHub. GitHub. Yes. You have used it before? GitHub. This. If you're in computer science, if they've ever given you an assignment, it's like, can you go do this? And you Google, you always probably find your code on GitHub, right? Yes. So now you really remember. Right? Yeah. Now GitHub, it is associated with open source. It is a company that stores people's code online. Does that make sense? So you can pay for some other features, but you can store code there for free. That's why it's the most popular for open source, because it's free. If you just want to store your code and then have other people work with you, the whole aspect of Git is code versioning and collaboration. So if I have a project and my friends are in Malawi and we need to be able to share that code, right? Git is one of our options. It's a tool for version control. Okay, recap for you, right? Okay, all right. So simple. We are now getting tools that we need to begin. So the first thing we need is a code editor. So I shared this thing for VS Code. You can use other editors of choice if you want. The next thing we need is something to process the language we'll be using, which will be JavaScript. So this is Node.js. That is like JavaScript runtime. Something to process the language you'll be using, right? And then the next thing here is Git. So GitHub, if you have used it before, Git and GitHub are different. Git is the technology. GitHub is the company, right? So Git is a tool for version control. If I have code and I have version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4, and I want to make a version 2.1 from version 4, this is a tool that was made long time ago to help with that, right? And also allow me to switch, right? And also if I make mistakes, I can be able to come back like, I changed something. What happened here, right? So it's a tool that is used for that. Also, if I need to work with somebody who is somewhere else, this is also the technology used for that. I can be able to do something, save, and then another person knows, oh, Paul did something, and then get my changes, right? Does it make sense? So another thing for now, all those people who are thinking about going to programming as a career. When I was in undergrad, a year before I graduated, my roommate, as I said, we used to do things, right? And his GPA was not 4, right? But he had other friends in our class who had 4 GPAs, but they were not programming in their own time. There was a company that came to recruit people, and you know what they were asking? Can you show us your GitHub profile? The reason why is your GitHub profile shows when you're coding. It has this thing. It has a thing here. Every time you do something, you see this? These green bars. The black days I did not code. Does that make sense? The green days, the more green it is, the more days, the more amount, yes. Does that make sense? So this is a good practical measure to say, like, you can say, do you program? But this is actual, like, unfakeable data to say, like, yeah, this is normal living. He does things. Does that make sense? So if you're into programming and you are gonna get a career in it and you're serious about it, it would be good you learn how to use GitHub, because as you're doing projects, there's a track record that is happening, and this will be valuable for you to get work because it shows that you actually do things. You don't say that you do things, but you actually do things. Does that make sense? So do make a GitHub account and do learn how to use Git. All right? So the next thing that we need here to use GitHub is Git. So I will also give you that. So Git. So this is the link to get Git. So you know when you have a tool for programmers, the website is always ugly. This is now you know that this is a website program. They don't care about how it looks. So this is a store for Windows. I believe there must be another thing here. Yeah. You see, very hard to read, very hard to see. You know that this is a tool for programmers. So this is Git. This is version. This is about version control and code collaboration, like that. So there we go. That's 3. We need these 3 things. If you can be able to get those, that would be great. I've shared the links in the group. And installing them, install all of them. I don't know if there's 2 things today we can do. Should I just go through it and then you spend time on your own, or should I be waiting for you? Because now we're going to be having 1 hour, 15 minutes. There are 2 ways. I could just go through the flow, and then in your own time, you can like try it, or you can be following up on catch up, but we have 2 approaches, waiting for each other, or I do, and then you follow up on your own time, which is better. I do, and then it's okay? All right, so maybe I think it might also allow you to focus, right? So that you're not spending too much time trying to catch up. Okay, so now that we have these 3 things, I'll go to that, the quick start that I told you about. This, so far for me, testing so many arrangements, this is the best quick start that I have experienced to say, like, this is how you get started very fast. And it has the best choices of the 3 things that I mentioned. You understand? So every time I'm starting a project, definitely this is where I go. This is because I'm giving you this because this is what I use. Because I find that, like, as he said, you can do front end, and then later on you're like, okay, now back end, what do I do then? And then now you have to start, doing slow tape, like patching like this, So this is a great quick start for you to begin that does all of those things already arranged for you in a proper way. So this is the T3 stack. Let me share that now. So our quick start is t3.gg, create T3 app. And over the time, some of the pieces I have also found maybe some of the more personal choices in those 3 pieces to say, like, oh, I think I like this for that one, right? But this is a really, really, okay, let me give context to this. Quick start for setup of front end, back end, database, and also authentication. So you had also some had mentioned about security, right? So I think another aspect of those 3 things that we mentioned is authentication, right? Every system has login, right? Because they need to know you, keep your data, and also keep um, um, your information away from somebody else, right? So authentication, which is practically login and register and all these things, is also an important part, right? So this setup does all of that for us, right? Or it arranges that for us, and then actually we make a choice. When you start it, it tells you, what do you want for this? And then you choose. What do you want for this? What do you choose? And then it configures it so that you can now begin the work. Because here, if you have a project, and if you fundamentally have understood all of these things, your objective is to start working, right? Besides the setup, the work is the project, right? So if you want to do a quick start, this is a really good quick start. Yes, yes. This would be equivalent to practically a preset template. Yes, okay? So when you come here, you have installed all of these three things, right? I'm going to close my browser because browser technology runs so much RAM, and I'm going to need that, right, in the editing. So I'll be closing this. You start with an empty folder, right? Empty folder. So let's get an empty folder. If you have VS Code, installed, you can be able to start like the editor from the browser, from the window, or you can be able to make a folder and then go in VS Code and then open the folder. So let's start somewhere on an empty folder. Don't mind my drive, it's full. So GitHub, and I think let's make I think let's make a class here. Okay, so if I have a folder like this, I can be able to keep where this folder is and then open my VS Code. So all of the installations, you do them, they are very simple. You just go next, 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 especially for Git. The steps are many, so just keep going. Next, 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 next. After that, you have this editor, which is called VS Code, Visual Studio Code for short. There is a bigger version of this. It's just called Visual Studio. It's much, much bigger because for people who want to do low-level things or things that require a lot of software development kits, like maybe C++, so many libraries. So there's a bigger version of this, but VS Code is a smaller version that just comes with the editor. Anything else you can add on top? Yes? Your MacBook, right? Any is fine. Any is fine, as long as you get the application at the end of the day. Any of your choice for the installer is fine. Yeah. Okay, so I need to say okay, close folder. This. Okay, so you come here. What we want to do here is open the whole folder, not a file. Okay, we want to open the whole folder. All right, so you come here and you say open folder, and you can find where that folder is. So that question that came back about the programming, like how many people have done programming, as we said? 1, 2. Okay, have you done any programming?
No, actually I haven't done it, but I'm using it. That's why.
All right, so we'll do some programming basics too. Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right.
MATLAB?
No, but as we said, MATLAB now is a language. Today, the concepts of programming are mostly the same. Okay? So today we'll be doing with one language, and then you can be able to adapt that in any form. But every single area, as you say, MATLAB is really good at the things for like mechanical, right? And it goes deep, right? So if you understand the concepts, then you should be able to dive deep into what is most essential to you, because every single thing goes deep, and we're going to be able to cover everything here. All right? So I'll do some programming basics for you, and maybe what you need to understand if you're learning programming, if you understand the core principles, every time you're moving to a new language, you don't fear. You know, like, how do I do a function in that other language? Then you just find out like that. How do I do a variable in that language? It's fine. How do I do a for loop in the other language? That's it. Okay? So get really good at one language, then transitioning is easy, because you know, like, every single aspect, right, I just have to learn how do we do the same thing I understand in here in the other side. Is that okay? Yeah. So question.
Maybe definitely one question regarding the general development issues.
Come again?
For example, I hope that you have some experience on software development. So my question is, now the latest technologies like AI,
Yes.
you don't need to start everything from the scratch.
True.
You know?
Yes.
Now AI tools helps a lot.
Yes.
But my question is, still there are some companies
Yes.
didn't encourage to generate code from AI and to integrate to their own system.
Yes.
Maybe they might have their own reasons.
Yes.
Like our friends in America,
Secu-
maybe suspect that maybe the generated code can have something that helps their own system.
Yes. Yes.
So my question is, to what extent the AI helps you to
Okay. Actually,
I know we don't need to write the classes, all these things from scratch. Maybe we need to make some kind of requirement analysis and
Yeah.
define all the serial code if you give it.
yeah.
Maybe you can change it to the way different program languages, maybe C# or PHP, whatever.
Yeah.
So my question is, to what extent you are using these AI tools to?
Okay. All right. So actually, that was one of the last things that I wanted to talk about. All right. As I think we started about this in the beginning.
And also the other, maybe together, just to consider it in your mind.
Okay.
What do we need to start? Of course, the syntax and semantics, understanding the language must.
Yes.
Clear.
Yes.
At least whatever the AI generates a code for you, you need to have the capability to understand whatsoever you generate.
Yes.
My question is, from your experience, do we need to write all the codes from
Scratch.
or
Okay. All right.
some
So.
experience of yours that I want to
Okay.
know?
All right. Actually, we will talk about that. We'll talk about that. Maybe since we're not talking about AI, maybe I can answer it now. Okay. So, actually, before you came, I was talking about this to them, that in this era right now where AI is, right, for every single field, when you hear that, oh, there's AI for this, when you're not in the field, you always think like, that's finished. You guys have no use for that, people, right? When I see when I see Gemini doing flyers, I'm like, the graphic designers are finished. You get the point? But then actually, when you go in and you try to refine, you find that you get frustrated because it's not there yet. It's not ready. And the same for us as well, right? People say like, oh, I can build an app with AI. But the scalability, practicality, deployment, and maybe the choices that those tools make might not be as practical if you are in a system that already exists, right? Or if you're in a practical setting where you're using it for a business. Does that make sense? It can be good for one-time use. But in engineering scope-wise, if you're using it in production and people are using it, there are so many decisions that a human needs to make, right, that actually are more essential to get that to be done. So, right in this age, right, for people who are outside, who are not in coding, they will tell you like, oh, AI can be like, no use for you. But you find that now there are a lot of people who are coming in to clean, to clean messes that people have done. You can starting is easy, but as more as you go refining with AI just from a chat conversation is not efficient, okay? So the best experience that I've had with myself, like using AI, I will say this, right? The tech is here, right? Is here and it's here to stay, right? It's best for you to learn how to empower your workflows than to just ignore it, just like, I don't use it. Get the point? There's projects that I could work on before, maybe for 2 months, that now I can probably do in 10 days or less. Why? Because if I am using the tool correctly, it can speed up my work. There are certain things that are repetitive or very definitive enough that if you assign them, it's very, very good. From my experience, there are so many tips that you can use to be able to get effective assistance from AI tools. I use AI tools for specific things. So, first thing, context is really, really important, right? You going to GPT to say like, I have, you have work, and in fact, in most working areas, you have legacy code. You have files, thousands of files, right? Millions of lines of code that the organization has been using and it has been growing, right, for years and years. And if you're being hired, you'll be able to be responsible for one area, right? You'll probably be responsible for one area. And if you go outside there, go to ChatGPT, say like, I have this problem, I want you to do this, and then you come and plug it in, definitely you're going to have issues because the bottleneck there is your ability to contextualize the situation. I find that in most cases, even for researchers, right, you are probably the bottleneck that is affecting the effectiveness of your results. If I'm writing something, and then I go to like ChatGPT, say like, oh, this is my situation. There's a problem that I'm facing here. Your explanation might have a lot of bias. And two, also the remaining context of where that thing is piecing in, right, is a really big missing component to allow you to get the best effective result. You end up having something to work. Maybe it might work, or it might have more issues, or it might not be the best thing because the AI will always answer you with the context you've given it, right? So for me, I would say that if I am using AI to assist me in specific work, the best thing that is really good is, one, you should fundamentally understand what is being done, right? At least you should have a fundamental understanding of what is being done, because then when the AI is doing something, you can understand the choices and you can make better directions, right? Two, AI in your code editor, right, that has context of the whole project is much more effective than you going outside and then doing snippets, because the context, you're losing context. Three, when you talk about how AI works, right, next week, right, running these things is very expensive, right? And all of the modules that are made have a context window, meaning that they have a limited amount of knowledge they can grasp to be able to answer you once. So if you have a 1 million line code base, because in most cases, if you're going to work at a software company, you're going to have thousands of files in code that has not changed in 2-5 years, right? Grasping all of that might not be maybe effective or might not be cost effective. And you know what these companies do in most cases when you're giving them too much data? Just the same way why my friend, my sister actually, who wanted help with the AI code, when she ended up giving like 4 books to ChatGPT, and then the answers were like completely false, right? It was because I could understand. When I took those books and I went in a token calculator, I find that those books were, you know, in the currency for AI is tokens, right? So it's not token, you can equate it in equivalent to words. We say words. It's not specifically words, but the closest we can get, let's say words, right? Those books were 1 million tokens. If you go on the ChatGPT website and check how much 1 million token costs to just input, you find that for some models it's $4. So it means for my sister to be asking that question every time, it's costing someone somewhere $4. Does that make sense? So you know what they do? They will drop you to a smaller model that costs 0.2. You know why? Because they're saving money. And I asked her, which ChatGPT are you using? Is it for free? She said yes. It makes sense, because for now, for them on their marketing, they want to say ChatGPT is free, but they cannot afford running the best model all the time, because there's a limit and there's a cost value to that. You understand? So if you're using so much, they'll just downgrade you because you're using free tier so that they can still be able to answer you, but maybe with less knowledgeable model because it costs less. So if you're in a code base and you're working efficiently for your work, it's very good because you understand what it is. Give the right context to say, like, this is the folder that I'm working on. This is the rest of the architecture that we're having here. This is what this is what I want you to do. This is step 1, step 2. These are my decisions about it, right? And you use Git as your friend. Because now when you say, I know specifically what I want, and I want you to do this, and these are decisions, and this is the context of what I need, when it does it, you can compare and read to say, like, okay, it did this, is this correct? This is correct. And since you know what it is too, if there are issues, you can go in and refine because you can understand what the code is doing. So it will not be right for you just to sit down and just be like, this, and then you sit down and then you just say, add to the code base for the company. Definitely that will have issues. But if you are working on a larger project and you're giving it enough context and the code editor is in your browser, it can see the folders, it can see the data, giving context, you're giving it specific instructions of what you need, and then at every step you're vetting the work. There, it becomes a useful tool. And you can keep, you know, the rubbish from the good assistance. Does that make sense? Because at the end of the day, these tools actually, if you use them well, they are very, very effective. And they can really speed up. You can become a one-man army. You can do more than you were before because now you have an assistant, you know, a personal assistant who's there like, whatever you need, let's go. And also, there are different models that are very good at specific things. I would tell you this, from my experience using AI models, right? They say ChatGPT, use it for code. the code quality that you get from Cloud Opus 4.5 Opus is the best coding responses you get, better than GPT, better than any other model. So I have tried all of these models in terms of helping me work, right? But you find out that there are different models for different that are good at specific things. And they're changing every day. There are models coming out every day. And you shouldn't lock in to say like, oh, me, I only use ChatGPT. Then you're losing out, right? You have less effective results. But for me, for example, but this model, right, costs so much money. Cloud Opus, officially, on record, costs $75 per million tokens. That's expensive. Get the point? So you probably have to budget. It's like my important thing. This is what I'm using for that. Get the point? But you have to know like best tool for best use case. GPT. I mean Gemini. Gemini. I think Gemini 3. I think Nano Banana. The image version. That is the best so far at this point, right? For images. So like if I am doing image generation, definitely I should go for that model. I shouldn't be like, I use GPT for everything, and then you choose a specific tool, the specific model for it, because all of these guys are providing this, so it's at your disposal. You lose out by just picking a party, like me, I'm Team GPT, you lose out. So you find specific things. For me, so far in coding, I would tell you that in one shot, if I have an instruction and I have a specific good context, Opus will usually get me 70 or 80% closer to what I need. And the number of rounds that I have to ask on refine, right, is less than if I'm using GPT. GPT is not the best at coding. Actually, it is far, far, far away from the quality that you get from Opus. Does that make sense? So give it the right context, give it the right environment. Also, for coding, feedback is very, very important. If you have a language that can tell you when you have made mistakes, right, and also you can allow the AI to run checks, that is the best feedback loop that you ever get for getting effective results, because that context plus like, did it work? No, it didn't. Again, refine is the best setup that you can have to get really good results. Does it make sense? So for those who are using AI for coding, that is the best setup. Give it the best context, allow it to be in the data, give it the tools to check. If you have a language like TypeScript, every time you make a mistake, it writes mistakes. So it means that if you did the first round, it's a mistake, before you even come to review, it will deal with those general basic problems already, right? So it means that the result that you're getting is actually much more refined, right? The editor itself will complain if the things are not matching other things in the project, right? Now, if you go out there and you're trying to code, but you're going to GPT, GPT has no context of this. When you write this and you come and paste in your code, everything is red, right? Because it doesn't know what is happening in that area. So if you're using AI for coding, that is so far in my experience, that is the best arrangement that you can do. Does that make sense? Does that answer? Yeah. So if you're using Git, every time you come, Git shows you what has changed in the code before you merge with your code, right? So you can be like, I gave you this task. Okay, this is correct. This could, maybe this I could do differently. You can go in, modify, or throw away the code if it's not good. So that one can be a very good gatekeeper if you're using it in an actual practical working space, because it is actually a helpful tool, and it will be a waste not to use it, because your productivity triples if you know what you're doing. Does it make sense? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, actually, I think that's what I'll show you guys today. So GitHub, the company, has an education bundle. You can register with the school email. When you do that, every month you get, like I said, Cloud costs $75 a month if you're paying for it directly. They will give you 250 of those premium requests. Every month they'll give you a large bundle of resources, including the GPT models, including the AI models to help you in your work. And I will tell you this setup is the best for data analysis than you going to GPT, telling it what your data might be and also what the code might be and having to run it and then going back and forth. If you have your model in your editor that can see the data, can see all the context, and can see the rest of the other code, you get a really good feedback. And if it can run, test, right, and do that, you get a very refined, better result than just going to GPT, writing thing, and then copying and pasting. Huh?
this cloud version? Because there is also cloud inside.
Yeah, so cloud is a module like ChatGPT provided by another company. Uh-huh.
So is acting, is doing the same thing in every
So right now, yes. Okay. So right now, the thing is, I actually, we're going to dive into this, but we'll talk about it next week. The thing about LLMs, right? Right now, almost, if you think, when you think about an LLM, the large language models that we have now, they are good at one thing. They are autocomplete models. Do you know how you text something, when you're writing on your phone, it says, I am going to, and then it says school, right? Bus, right? LLMs are practically a bigger scale of that. Their only good job, their literally one job that they have is to autocomplete. You get the point? We have learned and engineered to make something that is very good at like autocompleting. You say like, I am going to the market, right? And then it can like, to buy, whatever. We've just made a model that is so good at writing text based on what happened above. You get the point? So it means, since we have figured out that, oh, this is actually useful, if we can make an autocomplete model, give it some tools, give it some context, it can give us this. It means that this part can be swappable. Does it mean? You get the point? Right now, the race that is there is to make good products. Make good models, but also make good products out of the thing, because the piece of that autocomplete model can be changed. So it means here, the job of engineering this for them, right, was to make an editor, give it context, but it means this part of the AI model, you can change it. So you can use cloud if you want. Same thing. The rest of the things don't change. You can use ChatGPT, but now the quality of the results will just be based on the model, right? Its ability to handle context, its ability to do specific things. You get the point? So you can be like able to choose based on your money, the work you're doing, and also the type of model, right? Does that make sense? So you can switch. And all of these individual people have also made their own products. So like, this is an app just for cloud. And I would say that that's actually less effective than for you to get an app that you can switch, because now you find out that all of these have pros and cons, right? So it will not be a good resource for you to just go focus on one tool when you can find a tool that is using multiple and you effectively choose your tool for the job. Get the point? So in this case, VS Code is not providing any AI, but is allowing you to switch AIs to do the same thing based on your choice and money.
So in the case where you have the model integrated into your code editor,
Yes.
and it sees all your code, what are guarantees for privacy?
Oh, yeah, I think for he's gone. That's the thing though. Now, if you're every time you submit the data to the AI model, right? What they do with that data, you don't have a control over it. So if you are operating private matters that, like wherever you're working based on their governing policy of the data, right? If those rules say don't take our data outside and don't use it, you shouldn't, because you have no control of what they do with that data after. And there's no way you can. You can read their public policies, but what they do at the back is none of it, because it's their logic, it's their back end. You have no control over what they do with that. So by no guarantee should anybody tell you like, oh, by using us, then we'll not. No, they can do whatever they want, because for the LMs to work, you have to send all the data, all the context, send it to them, then they run it through their models, then they send it back. But what they do in between, you don't know, and you have no control over that. Does that make sense? So I think for that guy's question, that was another piece. That is good. That was a good question.
Thank you.
So we are bad there. So
In most,
we need to know to choose a certain thing, because we won't be asking AI to help you.
well, I would say that in the most normal use case, you will not have companies who are like, hey, like if you don't, like our data is you know, some of these things like places of national security or something like that, maybe, right? But for example, we all use GitHub to store code, right? So it means Microsoft, the owner of GitHub, has access to all our code, even if it's private, right? But it is in their best interest not to start like distributing that, because then you know that that credibility is the one. The moment that one day Microsoft is using your code to do something else, then it's finished, right? So it is, at some point, there is that checks and balances to say like, by the standard and ethics of the behavior, right? You have some guarantees, but there is no guarantee to say, right? So in most use cases where you work, you will not probably have that hard code requirement to say like, because like they have other things to do than be looking at your code. Does that make sense? Although they are using maybe all of our experiences to make the models better. But at the end of the day, I think the market is bigger for everybody. There's tons of work. Beside all the bigger clients, you have your whole friend circle, right? Who are probably looking for applications and websites, right, and systems. And you have your whole country that is behind in digitization, waiting for you to go and implement things. There's plenty of work. So if you're gonna stop yourself from progressing just because you're like, hey, what I have is precious, there's far more things that are precious. You end up not progressing. Does that make sense? So you probably have to find a balance. Like, is this worth it? Do I have move, right? Does that make sense? Oh, okay. His question. Oh, he asked the question that was part of yours about privacy. Because I think probably your friend, in another aspect, they might tell them not to use AI because of maybe the essential need for keeping the proprietary technology, right?
Proprietary.
Yeah.
Also, even some of the
Secrets.
codes in America, it was almost more than 10 years. Imagine.
Yeah.
Some
So
companies
they don't want.
to generate code from ChatGPT and to integrate with their own.
Yeah.
system.
So
This aspect maybe it might have some
issues.
challenges.
Yeah. So for the aspect of privacy, I was answering them that there is no guarantee that you can say, like, if you are in a state where the company or the government entity says don't feed our data to AI, it's too precious or it's secure, you shouldn't, because there is no guarantee on what the model providers do with your data once they are feeding into the AI, right? And yeah, I think for another part about the issues, I think it's simple. Give it more context, allow it to work. Before you merge the code, check, run some tests, and then when it's good, you merge. So I think that's the only balance. Otherwise, then you will never progress. Because even for that 10-year code, right, for it to work today and for you to improve it, you probably need to improve a couple of things. And the amount of labor that it will take for people to manually do that, and the amount of maybe labor that it will take with people who are using AI but are knowledgeable, is a balance that you can find, right? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions before we go? Let me check online too.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If you're not using your GitHub account for a long time, they will suspend your account?
No. But usually, the only issues I've seen in suspension, maybe things that are involving billing, like maybe you added a credit card or something and that probably card has an issue, or you use something that you're paying for and you didn't pay for it after, or your ID or something like that. But it's very rare for them just to ban you for nothing. Or if you have code that was used for malicious things. But it's very, very rare just for them to ban you for not using it. You've been banned? You can contact support and email them and then ask why, and then they'll probably help you. Or if not, open a new one. But for the GitHub education, let me send the link for that. Man, so many questions. All right, for the GitHub aspect, right? For the education benefit that I told you guys about, you can use any email, but at the end of the day, you will need your educational email as a supplementary or as a primary to get those benefits. They'll ask you like, okay, please log, which university are you from? You're gonna say, I'm from Wuhan, Ligong, right? And then they're gonna say, use your email, and then you use your email, and then they send you an email, then they confirm, they'll tell you, give us your ID or document specifying that you are a student. The best one is that one that says like, this is Paul Kachule. He's studying here until this phase, right? Because that one has like the school logo and the period of time. So that one is the best identity tool. So if you can do that, definitely they have arrangements with all the schools for them to be listed to say like, yeah, we have students who love them to get into coding, right? When you do that, you get a good range of usage for the AI tools, right? You can use that for coding, you can use it for data analysis. I'm telling you, Claude and this setup is the best for data analysis than for you to be doing on ChatGPT. This is the best setup you can do for data analysis. Put your data in the folder, have the AI look at it, right? State your objectives, run it. The circle of looking at your data, more context, right? Any other codes that are required, more context. The feedback loop of it running, getting errors, processing them will give you the best result you ever get than you going on ChatGPT with it only understanding the context that you are thinking is the situation. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, okay, questions here. Yes, cloud-based platform, VS Code, any reason for the dashes? Oh, no. The folders, no need for dash. It's just me. The dashes are for folders that have maybe other things inside. So it's more of like me just remembering that this is a category of projects than a project folder. I guess here that doesn't matter. Okay, folder name doesn't matter. So we open the folder. We open the folder, and then you find where the folder is, and GitHub. Ooh, where is GitHub? Am I lost? Okay, I am in GitHub. Okay, class. So here I will make maybe one more project folder. So I'll say class 1. I'll share this project, but following this process, you can be able to produce this on your own. Okay, so you select the folder, and then that's it. So when you come here, maybe this is new for some people, right? The editor itself. Remind me at the end to send you the link for the GitHub education. Okay? Yeah. So in this area here, this is where your files are. Okay? In this area is what you open, and here is your AI if you need the AI. Okay? If you close it, the AI is up here. You can always find it here. Okay? And what we need here, if you're programming a lot, you have to be best friends with the terminal. Terminal is like the command line, right? You know, you find it if you search on Windows. If you search command line, this thing, maybe you see it around, maybe you see it opened by other applications, okay? Or maybe if you're following some instructions that tell you open the command line, it looks like this, right? We're all familiar with this. This is more of like the not very low level, but like a middle ground to talk to the computer with some commands, right? They have their own, for Windows they have their own language, for Mac they also have their own language. It's called Bash, and for Windows it's called Batch, and there's another powerful one called PowerShell. Up to you. So this is your best friend if you're gonna be like working with programs. If you have installed that node, there's a way to check. So you can write node like that, put a V, and then it'll tell you like, yeah, you have node version what. So this is just called a command. If you just enter something, it's just a command, right? You can also do so many things in here. You can install things, you can open folders, you can do so many things. This is a more powerful way to control the computer than user interface, right? So we want to access this terminal in the code editor. So the top part here, you can say terminal, say new terminal, and it will open the terminal in the specific folder that we have opened in our VS Code, okay? Because the next step that our quick start tells us is the command you write in your terminal to set everything up, okay? So all we need to do is open VS Code, choose the folder, choose the terminal, and then paste the command. So the command from our quick start, right? If you come here in our quick start page, the one that I sent, there is this best way to start a full stack TypeScript Next.js project, right? And then there is this here. This is the command that you put after you've installed Node, after you've installed everything, to start everything. So you do copy here, and for Node.js, there are different installers. So up to you, there might be, you might choose. But for starters, you get this one, this first one. So you can just do this one. For me, I like this one, but all are the same. And then you can go here and then paste this in your terminal and just press enter. Then it will process everything. The questions that are needed for you to ask you, like, what are you using for this? What are you using for this? They will come after the installation part is done. Does that make sense? Any questions before we proceed? Yes. For this to work, you will need Node, because all of this now, we're in JavaScript land. And for JavaScript to work in your terminal, you're going to need Node. Is okay? We're good? All right. So now, the first question, what is the name of your app, right? So it will ask you here. Then you just say class 1, and then next. Are you using JavaScript or TypeScript? The differences are this. JavaScript is the normal language used for web logic, right? It is very easy to use, and it also has many ways of doing the same thing, but also it is not a strict language. What that means is that you can do almost anything easily, and it will just be okay with it. It is not specific. People who have touched Java, right, or C, will find that they have to probably declare types of everything. Just like those languages are so serious. If you want to do anything, you have to say like, oh, this is the thing, and this is what it will do, and this is what it's gonna give me after. Because in a way, it is for your own safety, right? You end up not writing programs that will end up failing. You solve solvable problems before they happen, right? So if you want to low bar of entry, easy, JavaScript. If you want the same JavaScript but with types, like with you having to say what everything is doing, of which, in my experience, I advise you to use TypeScript, this is what you choose. Because JavaScript is easy. Starting is very easy. You do, and then at the end of the day, you're fine. When you go into the real world system, those problems that it's ignoring are gonna come up. And when they come up, they're gonna be issues that you could have solved before, right? So it means now you're introducing issues that could have been resolved early, right? There's a reason why the early programs were doing the types in the first place. It helps to solve problems that haven't happened, okay? Other people say the language stopping you from shooting yourself in the foot, because you can do that. As the project grows, you forget what happened there, you forget what happened there. The TypeScript allows you to know the problems before they happen, all right? So I would recommend you. I started with JavaScript, and then at the end of the day, when I realized like, this is not sustainable, I moved to TypeScript. And the transition was hard. I would advise you to just start from TypeScript today, okay? Because eventually you're gonna be like, JavaScript is easy, and then later on you have transition, and that transition is painful. I was doing an internship at one place before I finished my undergrad, and we were learning with JavaScript, right? And then when a client came and said like, no, me, I don't want that JavaScript, I want TypeScript, it was painful for everyone, right? Some guys came and they were like, they even dropped out of the project because they were like, the transition was hard, because they had gotten easy, they had gotten used to the language just being okay with everything, to a point where it allows you to make mistakes easy, okay? So I advise you to learn TypeScript than JavaScript, okay? Yeah, so, but mostly, the code is the same. The only addition is that you have to probably say what anything is beforehand. I will show you what it looks like, okay? And then it asks you, do you want to use Tailwind CSS? So CSS and Tailwind is, CSS on its own is the language that is used to make everything look nice. If you saw the website for Git, right, it's very ugly, right? It means that nobody didn't spend time to make it look nice, you know? You see some programs that look very beautiful, right? The things move around, they are blue, they are all these things. So it's not even a language, actually, it's very few. It's a very small set of things that you use. But the thing that you use to start is like, this box has curves, right? It's blue, it glows. When you hover on it, it glows, right? That's CSS. So there's the original CSS way, and then there's the modern way that is called Tailwind, which is like another way of writing CSS, but in a more easier, safe, not safe, but easier and better experience way, right? So it's called Tailwind. So this is yes or no. I would advise you to say yes, because we're just starting, and it would be helpful to do that. I'm using TRCP. So one of these guys here asked me, how do you connect your backend from your front end? The normal traditional way is you just make APIs, and you hope, your front end hopes that when we're asking the logic, that is that door open, it's open. Or if that door has changed, it's there, right? There's a thing here called TRPC, of which, from my experience, the traditional method had issues. I had issues. I would write my front end that changes, and then my back end has changed, and then the things are not interacting. Or I'm expecting data from the logic, and the logic is not the same. TRPC is a solution that was made to bridge the gap between the front end and back end, to say like, when something changes on the logic, the front end should complain, to say like, bro, the back changed. Please change me, otherwise then we're gonna be problems, right? Okay, so this one, I also recommend you to say yes, because as we're saying, this is a quick start to the perfect setup, right? So you say yes. And then login. There are two types of, we talked about like, if I'm making a real world application, you would need to say like, who am I, what's my username, what's my password? Also many options, right? For here, as the perfect setup, they're giving us some recommended options, right? And for me, I would recommend you to use this one because it's this next auth. It's a good experience. And when they do this, they'll set it up. You don't have to worry about it in the beginning until you're ready to learn what it means to do like login and authentication. Okay, so do that next. Next part, database. The third thing, right? There are ways for you to write. There are languages for you to choose for your backend. You can use MySQL. There's MongoDB. There's Supabase. So many options. Okay. All of them have different languages on how to use them. There is a solution. There's a solution that was made by other people called a concept, ORM. So an ORM is one interface to talk to different databases, meaning that you just learn how to use that interface, and then on the back you can change the database. You can just wake up and say like, I want to use Mongo today, or I want to use MySQL, or I want to use SQLite, right? Different databases. So this allows you to be able to work fast because it means based on your choice for database, you're not locked in to say like, I wrote everything in MySQL, now everything is messed up. If there's a new need for us to move, then you have to move. You choose an ORM, and then you can do that. But trade-offs come also, maybe speed or anything like that. But I will find that for the most use cases that I've had, an ORM is better because it means I can move fast, right? I can move fast. I can switch databases, no problem. I don't have to change anything else later, right? It allows me to even like define what the database looks like, and it applies it to the database no matter the database language. So it's up to you to talk to the database directly. Also, abilities for you to shoot yourself in the foot, or if you want to use and the constraints and the requirements allow you to use an ORM, I recommend you to use an ORM because it means you can swap those things and everything else this side stays the same, right? Your logic stays the same, your front end stays the same. Does that make sense? So that's the next thing here. And recommendation, I would take Prisma. Okay, so all of these are like just products, right, with names that don't really mean anything beside the maker calling them something. Okay, at the end of the day, you can try this configuration of different things when you get more comfortable, and then mess around with things. So here, would you like to make Next.js app router? So we will be using a framework called Next.js, and it has two types of ways of using it, and I will not go deep into that because this is not the topic. So here I just say yes. And for the database, as we said, since we're using an ORM, we have a choice. We can choose any database type we want. These ones are mostly, the choice to these are mostly based on how you're going to be storing your database. For SQLite, it's good if your system is, like, at least your logic on your backend is in one place, okay? Because it's going to store one file to keep all your logic, or to keep all your database. Does that make sense? And if you're deploying this on the web, especially in these modern times, your website is usually like in many copies all around the world, right? And it's very difficult. If you have one file database everywhere where the website has been copied, then nobody's talking to the same system, is it? Because they're all storing information in their own file. So it would be good for you to use a database that is able to be stored online in one place. So your options are MySQL, the more modern, like more popular model that I personally also like to use is Postgres. If you're going deep into database, there are differences, but as we said also, being that we're using an ORM, the differences there will not feel them so much. I would recommend you to use Postgres for starters because it has less small constraints, but the ORM will cover us in any shortfalls, okay? So Postgres, and this is asking me about a linter. So a linter is something that tells you when you have a problem in your code before you run it. Like, it's like a spelling checker. When you make a mistake, it writes like this red line under the, like, oh, wahala here, problem, right? So it will tell you that. So also, you have many choices on those. The modern one that I really like these days is Biome, so you can choose Biome. The question about Git comes. If you're going to be doing a real-world project, right, it will be good for you to keep versions of your project. also allow that project to be set up in a way that people can collaborate with you from the very beginning, so that if anything happens, right, you know that we're scared. You don't have to wake up one day and be like, hey, we need to start collaborating, because any project that grows, definitely you would want it to collaborate with other people. But also, if we want those green marks on the GitHub, we're gonna need this. So you say, do you want Git initialized? Say yes. Do you want, this is now installed. Do you want, like, this is meaning like, do you want, now we have all the choices that we want. Do you want it to install the things for you, right? After it has done. Because you might want to do something else, but here we would like to say yes. Then this, an alias, is more of like, you know, the location to our folder is very long, right? So we can choose anything, to be like maybe Paul or add, but it's best to be simple, to represent the rest of your folder name, right? So in my case, I like this at. So I can just say at, and then I know that from there I'm starting to folder of like maybe my files or something like that. You get the point? So it's like you're choosing a nickname for the rest of the name of your project, so that if you're referencing that in your code, you don't have to remember the whole location of your folder. Cool? Then you just do enter. Then it will do that. So you come in here, it is installing the things, and it makes a nice folder that configures everything that we've talked about here. Front end, back end, database, already all done. Now the work here is the project, right? There might be other things that you might want to add here and there, but you have all the essential basic pieces to be able to run this all done. Okay? That's too much, right? It's too much for now, but any questions before we go? But it gets better. Actually, the more you do this once, you do this twice, it gets much better. And as I said, have an objective to say like, I want to achieve this, and then when you start and you do this multiple times, it gets better. All right, it gets more familiar. Any questions before we go? Any questions? We're good? Or overwhelmed already? Too many things?
Yeah, for me, because I don't have really
Good experience. All right. I really understand. And don't worry about this. When you find time, just sit down, do this once, do this twice, and then you end up getting familiar with it. Every single aspect is, yeah.
Can you send this book to this abstraction?
My choices?
Choice, yeah.
My choices, right? Okay. Let me screenshot that. But actually, for this quick start, right? Almost all the choices are pretty good. It's just gonna be maybe mostly on preference, but yeah, I will share this so that you can reference that.
Can you remind please? This is for what? Like what?
Huh?
For what purpose? Is we need
T3 app, create T3 app. It is the tool that, like, it's a project, open source project that is used to make a template of all the best tools for, as we talked about. We need front end, we need the back end, we need database. So it's like a collective of people saying like, okay, let's make something that gives you a choice to pick anything here, and everything is already set up for you to just begin the project, right? If you understand these concepts, at the end of the day, it's a waste of time to start going, I have to do this again for everything, because this is just for us to start, right? The objective is the project. It's not you, like, fixing things, just doing the setup. And if you have to do that every single time, it's a waste of time. Does that make sense? So Create 3 app is like a collective of a couple of people who said, I think these are from our experience, and the choices that I made here, I also agree. From trying different things, I would say that these are some of the best choices for you if you're beginning a project. It's easier to, if anything happens, it's really good to scale. And also, if you need to swap something, also very good.
Are these the choices that you gave, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it like whatever objective you have,
Yes.
you can have the same choices?
Yes. So
If it's any purpose, like your project has any, like
Mhm.
So all of this might have different. Like,
So for a scenario where you have the setting where you have a front end, a logic, and a back end, yes. If you are building a mobile application, different arrangement. This has nothing to do with that scenario. So as I said, before you begin a project, you ask like, what specifically do I need to achieve here? And from there, you look at the recommendations for that. So this is mostly for a full system that has its first front end as the web. Does that make sense? And which I do think for the beginning level where you want to learn how to build systems, the web interface is the best way to start, because immediately as things are working, you can be able to have your interactions immediately. The mobile sector is a bit difficult to start in comparison to the web sector. The remaining parts of like the logic, they will still never change. The database will change, but now this piece of what are people using to interact with your system, the mobile one is a bit harder to start. Okay, you also have the desktop one too, same thing, right? So the web one is the best start because low bar of entry, and also it means immediately you can have people like looking at what you're doing, right? Is that okay? Any questions in the? Okay. Nope. All right. Cool. All right. So this might take a while based on your internet and also your speed. I think my PC also is suffering from the streaming, processing the streaming. Let's wait for it a little minute. Now, maybe let's just do some programming basics, right? So, for any programming language, at least you have a few things. You have variables. Variables are more like somewhere to store information, right? Temporarily store information. You have, wait, programming. Okay, while this is loading, let's open our browser here and let me show you F12. All right, yes.
Do you see this near future, like 5-10 years, web developers gonna be less valuable because of trade,
5-10 years. 5-10 years. You think so?
Yeah, I think so. Right now, like the junior developers, they're
Oh.
almost done. And the senior developers are junior developers. Like
Well,
this transition happening.
I think, yeah, maybe junior developers, yeah. You know, the thing is, the thing I think about a lot when I think about AI is, you know, a long time ago, people used to go to school to be translators, right? Like, long time ago, people used to go to school to be translators. And then at some point when Google Translate came out, like, that range of jobs became not obsolete, but a majority of it. For professional translation, you still have to probably go to somebody and get notarized and everything, right? But for a good, like, casual amount of people, right, it was gone. But you still find that professional level. And as I was saying still, I think for AI, whenever you're not in the field, when you see somebody else's job, you feel like it's done, but it's when you're in it, you realize that they still work. As that guy was saying, if you're in a large system and you're actually producing working code for big companies, there's still a lot of area for knowledgeable people. But his point of junior developers is true. For people who are just doing basics, people like, you know, tasks that people are giving to interns now can be given by AI. But you still need to level up now. Just the same way a long time ago, people used to use horses for cars. When the wheel came out, right, there were cars, but it didn't mean that like transportation is not happening anymore. It just meant that Now you have to find new problems to deal with. So there will be still programming and system design work, but certain things are basic things now maybe might become obsolete, but they still work. For web design, as I explained the first time, there's a portfolio site and there's a system. Portfolio sites, even though you can do one with web, but if you are a more like a detail-oriented person who wants to like micro-tune, of which for my clients, I found that most of them at the end of the day, they're like, that thing is like this, you know? If you're doing micro-tuning with AI, you have a very tough and frustrating time. Like, can you just change that thing, you know? But overall, just like make your best choices, do things, and then you'll be happy. You're not gonna be like OCDing on the tiny things. It's okay. But when you meet a person who has very strict requirements, that's very hard. So it means that for people who are specialized or experts, there's still room. But for people who are just doing things a bit more casually, or like their interns, junior developers, it means that you might have to level up a bit more before you can get some work. But it doesn't mean you should stop learning web design or learning system design or coding, because there's still room for those works, maybe just different tasks. And I will tell you this, like right now, most of the times if you're in a real world system, when you find people who decided to go AI full force, they'll come back to you and say like, my system is working, but their problem is come and fix it. So now there are even people when they're LinkedIn, they're calling themselves like AI cleaners, you know, because their job now is to come to a client who decided to say like, I'm gonna make it AI, and then tons of problems, and then somebody has to come in and be like, okay, fix this, fix that, fix that, fix that. You get the point? So it doesn't mean that you should stop learning web design. I think for systems, if integrating AI into existing systems is still probably a big market, it would be like digitization. How long time ago using paper, right? And then we had to spend some time turning paper into digital. Now we have to probably add AI to every single thing, right? So there's still work for you. Get the point? Yeah, and for non-detail oriented works, no problem, you can throw it at it. The moment you start trying to refine, yeah, you're gonna have a good time, like shouting at the AI and refining. So there's still room for web development. For portfolio sites, I will recommend you not to use code. For portfolio sites, I will recommend you to use something like WordPress, a drag and drop thing, because there's still work to be done. But if you're doing a code system, there's so many things that you have to like refine and do on yourself than if you're doing a well-developed like builder like WordPress. So if somebody comes to you and they tell you like, I want a website, what is it for? I just want to say my company does this and they will contact me. Don't even go to code. Go to WordPress. Get the point? Because you can drag and drop, finish. If somebody says something, those tools are mature enough for you to fine-tune the detail. If somebody tells you, I want a website, okay, what does it do? Oh, it's a hospital thing. I need people to log in and code. You get the point? Because now you have to probably go in and make very intentional decisions, and as the system scales, you might have to do a lot more optimization, which should not be allowed by a platform that is meant to abstract all of those things. Make sense? So still room for that, and always keep on a lookout. Don't be rigid to say like, oh, me, this, I don't do this, I don't use AI. You will be left behind, right? So, and also in every single area, when something is new, there are gonna be so many iterations before until we find where the thing truly stands. For most cases, AI that has been put into things, you find out that when you look at the statistics, not many people are using the AI tools. So it's still being figured out, right? Still being figured out. So there's still room for you to learn. But if you're gonna go in as a casual person, yes, there will not be space for you. So you need to step up, right? If you go in to just be an intern and do like basics, changing text, it will not work. You get the point? So you probably have to level up a bit more. Do the systems, learn what it takes to run a system, then you become an expert. They'll call you to clean up the mess, okay? And they'll know your value when they come and do that, because they'll have realized that, yeah, there's still room for this, right? So think about that. Think about it like the translators, right? Later on, they had to find probably different jobs, right? It didn't mean that we don't have any work in linguistics. It just meant that certain areas, certain problems in that field are now obsolete, right? But there's still language majors, right? There's still other works to be done. Cool? Okay? Okay. All right. So programming fundamentals. If it's JavaScript, your browser, you don't even need Node. You can just come here, press F12, or click inspect, and then you get this here. All right? So here you can write JavaScript. right? So the first thing, because I didn't think I would, let's see. Yeah. So maybe let's start very, very basic, right? What is a program? So a program is practically like a set of instructions to say like, do this, do that, do this, do that, do that, do that, do that, and then achieve your goal, right? And along the way, you might, let's say I want to be able to get everybody's name here, right? And then make a letter that says, Paul, you have been invited to the workshop, right? Instead of me writing it to say like, get the name from the form, and then after that say, add this message to the form many, many times, I might want that job of getting the name and adding the message, right? I might want to write it one time, right? And then reuse it. Now that's what we call a function, right? A thing that has been made to be, like a set of instructions that has been made to be reused many times, right? That's a function. And let's see, what else do we have? So for, yeah, if you might want to do math, right? So addition, subtraction, and all of that. Most of it is practically close to what we write, but for every language it will be different. So as we said, you have to know when you enter a language, how do we store text, right? Variable, that's how we store something. How do we write a function, a set of instructions that are repeatable? So in every language, there'll be a way to say how do you write a function. Okay, what else? Mathematics, how do we do addition? How do we do plus, right? How do we say if this is equal to this, then do this, right? If statements, okay? And I'm hoping that most of us have had some experience of that a bit in some languages. So functions, when you have a function too, because you want the set of instructions to produce different results, you might want to be able to like give it certain input and then it gives you a different result. So in programming, they call those arguments or parameters, right? Things that affect the output of your function, right? And then you have arrays, I think, yeah, sets. I think let me go maybe with arrays and errors, classes. Okay, all right. So let's start with a variable. So a variable is a way to store text in a programming language. So for JavaScript, the way to do that is you say var, which is like variable. Then you name the variable. Let's say I want this to be named. And then you say is equal to, and then if it's text, you put some like commas, right? And then you say po, like that. So if I write here name, this has been stored. You see what I comes back? What I put in the variable. Is not big enough? Okay? Right? So this is a variable, right? So at the end of the day, this is made in every language is way to store it, because at the end of the day, the practicality of you trying to build something, you will need to store some information in something, right? And then do something with it, right? For function, in JavaScript, really you start first by saying function, then the function name. So you can maybe say function name to say, maybe say hi, right? And then you put these two brackets like that, and then you put these two curly brackets. The reason for the first one is where you put your arguments, the input, and then in here you put the arguments, the steps to do, okay? So you can press enter so that, because it's readable, for you can write this in one line, or you can, usually in programming, the best way is if you do a bracket, you do another one on the next line so that you can easily see, right? So let's say this one, in JavaScript, printing, this is how we print. We print by just saying console.log, and then we print something. So let's say hello, like that, like this. So you press enter. So it means that this now is a function that I can reuse many times that only does the job of saying hello, 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 right? If I write this function, which is calling it practically, say hi, and I use those same brackets like that, I should probably go in the editor. Define console log. Okay, it's not running in here. Function, say hi, say hi. Okay, I think let's see if our thing is finished here. We can do it better in the editor. Oh, this thing failed. If it fails, it's red. Oh my goodness. We have to make those decisions again. Oh, sorry. We're on the level of installing. npm install. ctd class 1. npm install. Okay.
I have a question.
Mhm.
How long you've been using JavaScript?
2018.
Since
Yeah. Okay. I think the best here, so that I can be able to give you guys a file, is, let me write class1.js. Let's see, CLS. My PC is suffering. Come on. Okay. All right.
do you remember, like, after how long of using JavaScript, you realize that
It's easy.
like, yeah, easy and
JavaScript
mastered it?
is, maybe 2018. I got internship, and I think the most experience I had was when I was at internship. So I started learning it in maybe late 2018.
Within 1 year.
Yeah, wait, my internship was in 22. I think maybe I would say for you to be comfortable, maybe 6 months. But it really, for you to start doing something, you can start doing something today. But to say like, okay, I think I'm comfortable, 3 to 6 months. But I would say that if you're learning something, right, it'll be good for you to make time for it, right? So for somebody to confidently come to me and say like, can you do anything? And I'm like, yes, I can do it in JavaScript. Maybe I'd say 6 months. But to do something, days you can be doing something, okay? Yeah, var. You know, for me, I haven't written JavaScript in a long time. I write TypeScript these days. Paul. Let's see, and console.log name. Let's see if this will run so that I can have some name 1, so that I can have something to share with you guys. So it's a node class1.js. And let's, oh, this file is not in the right place. Yes. Okay, there we go. Okay. So, okay, so this is how you write variables. And also another thing in programming is called commenting. This is how we comment in JavaScript. So this is how we make variables, like that. And this is how we print. This is how we print something in JavaScript. And this is how we write a function. So you do function, and then you say hi, and then you put these brackets, and then you open it like that, and then you can do the hi like that. And then this function, when you make a function, it will just be a function. You need to call the function for it to run. So in this case, from our code here, it's just going from the top, right? Going down, right? We made the name, we created the name, and then we want to use the function. So here, say hi. So if you run this, running a JavaScript function when you have Node, you just say Node, and then you say the name of the file. Okay? So here, we do that. It did pull from the first part, and then here we called the function. So as we said, the next thing that we have here is this is calling the function, and then here we have arguments, right? Function arguments. Let's say we want something that says, we just say hi, and then we give the name, and then it says say hi Paul, right? And then if we change the name to Joseph, it says hi Joseph, right? So it means same thing. We do a function, say hi, maybe give this a name or two. And then in here, you can put an argument. So an argument is like input which changes the result of the function, right? So let's say here, this name is what we wanted to be able to say hi and to do. So as this has done, console.log, the hi, the static part, that doesn't change hi, and then we add what we got from the top. So it means that if we're calling this now, right, it's going to be, okay, this autocomplete is too much. Say hi Sarah, hi John, like that. It means that whatever we put it as input changes the result of what the function gives us, right? So if we call this to run again, same thing. Said Paul, hi. It said Paul, hi, then hi John, hi Sarah. Because in the first function that we gave here, we were only writing the text. But in this second one, we have an argument that if we give it as input, it can be reused to change the result of the function inside. Does that make sense?
It does, but now where does it take the input? John,
Oh, here, down here, when I am calling it.
oh, yeah, you say.
Yeah, when I am calling it. Does that make sense? Because when you make a function, on its own it will do nothing until you call it. Does that make sense?
So can you not say hi to name and then it calls for it?
Say hi to?
Say hi and then say hi to name.
Oh, yes. Yes, you can do that. You can do that. Yes. You see how we stored Paul1 here, right? So that is actually a very good example. So you can say hi, name1, exactly like that. And then it means that the variable we stored up there will be used as the input for the function. That's a great example. So yes, it will say hi, Paul. Is that okay? Are we good? The next important thing that every language will have will be arrays. Now, let's say in some situation we had those names, Sarah, Paul, John, and everybody, right? And we wanted that function to do all of them at once. We don't want to be able to say John and like multiple. We don't have to do multiple variables, right? So an array is an object that stores multiple things. It could be text, it could be anything, okay? So in this case, we just say var. We still use the var. In JavaScript, we still use the same var, like keyword, and then we say names. And then in here, we can put those names. Paul, John, right? We can put John, Sarah, like that. Okay? And then, okay. When you have an array, every position in that array is numbered. Okay? So if we have Paul here, the position in programming for most of them, they start on 0, they don't start on 1. So this part that has Paul is 0, this part that has John is 1, this part has 2, and it can go on and on like that, right? So it means, in this case, if you want to say hi Paul, we can say names, and then we put these now these are like these blocky brackets, right? You put the the position of the items that you want. So in this case, the result is going to be what? High what? Sarah?
High one.
High poor.
One will say one, high three, high two.
Yes, the input can change. I mean, what would be the output? Poor, right? Correct? Yes? This, what would be the output here? It's going to be poor, right? Yeah. So it's going to be poor. So this is, if we do this, now it's going to be high poor. Does that make sense? Does it make sense? If we make this 1, it's going to be John. Yeah, like that. So now this is arrays. Now, if you have an array, right, now there's more possibility that we can do. Loop, that's a good autocomplete. If now we have these arrays, now we have the ability to automatically go through all the names, right? So it means if you have an array like this, you can do like an array here, names, and in JavaScript, a way to iterate to go through all the things in the array is called a mapping function. And in other languages too, there are things called mapping functions where you can iterate through an object, right? Or like an array as we have here. So in here, what you do is you say, okay, we have to do with the input what should we do with every entry of those things, right? So here, you could feed it, you could pass, like you could give it the function that we already wrote, or we can write another function. So we can just say function that we already wrote, or we can write another function. So we can just say function with no name, and then in here do this, okay? So console.log .hello plus, and in here, we can be able, in here, what we do is, we can be able to get, one, the position of the object plus the content, okay? So I believe it should be index, and it should be value, like that. So we can be able to, in here, these variables, you can be able to add text plus variables by just doing plus, 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 plus. So for example, here it can be index like this, and then here we can be value. So I want to see what that does, and then let's go. No, I think it's the opposite. It's value. We're getting 1 on the end, and then this is index. Okay. Index is the position of the object in the array. Okay. So if we clear this, if we call this again, you see what we're getting? It means that for all the entries in that array folder, we're doing something to each and every one of them. So that is a mapping function. Okay? It means we can do something with everybody, which is useful. In a real world scenario, if you're going to be sending emails to 50 people, you would first want to go get the names, put them in an array, and then do a mapping function to say, like, for each and everybody, send email. Does that make sense? So you see how that becomes useful in the real world, right? So you have a mapping function. Also, so this is mapping function. Scenarios where you might want to do something and then you need to wait. So these are called, in JavaScript, they're called promises or await, async await. The idea is, if you're in the real world system, for example, you have ChatGPT, right? You want to do something and then you ask, but then immediately the program has to be waiting to get the answer, right? So you do await async for defining a function that waits for something. And then await is used when you are actually using it, okay? So, for example, you can have a function like that gets data. And this is an upper level word that says promises. Promises is more of the background of the whole concept of waiting, promising, the whole aspect of like waiting for something and then getting the result. Does that make sense? So in JavaScript, this is a way to do like a timeout, waiting for, like, let's say you want your program to wait for 5 seconds, or 2 seconds in this case. These are milliseconds, so this is 2 seconds. So we're just doing an example to say, like, if we had if we had a scenario where we had to go get data from ChatGPT or something and then wait for the result, right? What we'd want is, we would want the result to actually wait for that, because immediately if we just say, go get data from ChatGPT and then like print the data, it won't be there, right? So in JavaScript, there's a way to understand this, and the way this is called async await, or promises in general. So a promise is something that you're telling the program to, like, there's going to be something, but believe me, there's going to be something. Please wait. You have to go. Okay. All right. Actually, it's almost 5. We have to wrap up a bit. So when you're running this, you say, let's say variable result. As we said, variable can be anything, right? And then you await. So you define a function that takes time by saying async. And then when you're calling a function that needs to wait for something, you do await. And in this case, we're actually doing nothing but just waiting 2 seconds before we send the data, all right? So in this case, and then we're gonna print again, console.log result, and we can add some text here to actually remember that this is result, plus like that, and then let's go. Waiting for 2 seconds, and then receive. Does that make sense? Okay? Okay, all right. So before I maybe go too much into this, let's look at our setup so that you might be able to have some time to work on some real-world projects. So in our case, in this folder, everything has been arranged for front-end, back-end, and database. And the way this is set up is, in here, the first part is Prisma. Prisma is the database connection that we use, right? The ORM that we chose. In here, we can define or specify what our data looks like when we're storing it. So in this example, they've given us a post. Let's say you're on a website and you do posts, right? So it means a post, maybe will have a name, it'll have the date it was created, it'll have a date, maybe that was updated, and then later on too, you might want your users to log in, right? And how do you want to keep the information? So you want to store maybe their user ID, maybe the type of the user that is, and you can add other things on top of it. And this is where you define the data that you're going to be storing in the database, and you can add different values. So here they've given you an example of like having a user data plus also an example of a post. So this is where you have your database schema, your database design. In normal senses, you would have to learn maybe MySQL and write the database structure in MySQL. Or if you're changing the database, you'd have to also find a way to write the database design with another language. But in this case, all we have to know is the way to write the database design with Prisma. And then it will apply that to our database, even if we change it. Okay? The next part we have in here, public. Public is a folder that just keeps information, keeps files that are going to be accessible to the general public. For example, if you have a logo of your website, you put it in here, because it means at no extra level you might want the user to access this. Okay? Then here, this is where the actual code is, and they've even labeled it very well here. There's like the app, that's where most of the front end will be, and maybe some back end as well. But we chose TRPC, as we said, is our connecting bridge between our front end and back end, and that is the one that is labeled here, server. And then we have this thing, styles. As we said before, like if you have UI, for it to look good, you need to like say like, oh, this is blue, this is black, this or that. So you have it here, but there are other ways of using this when you're designing your front end, okay? So I'm just going to explain every folder before we go in. And then in here, you don't mostly touch this. This is the thing that is set up to allow you to use the TRPC, which is a connection between your front end and your back end. And then in Node, an env file is an environment variable where you store your keys, your secrets, things that you don't want to give to the public, right? These can be in forms of, let's say if you're using ChatGPT, you might have a key that says you're allowed to use ChatGPT and it's only you, right? So this is where you put that. Gitignore is a file that stores the folders that should not be saved on GitHub, right? So including those things, like we said, we don't want our env to go there, it's here. So anything else that we want to just keep on the PC or is reproducible, we don't want to waste space on GitHub for that. So that's what a gitignore is. Okay, I feel like I shouldn't explain some of these extra things because now those ones might just be too much to grasp at the moment. All right, so quick start. We have been set up like this. Everything is already been done for us. How do we start the project? There will probably be a README in here that will tell you how to do that. In here, they're telling you the things that we have chosen to use for this technology, and also some other links to how to put this on the actual internet when you're done. And when you're starting any project like this that is using Next.js as the front end, where we start is here. These are some instructions that we can run in our terminal to run the project. So for example, they've said here dev. Dev is more like development. If I am working on the project, right, how do I run it to see what I am doing? So in here they've given us a command like this. So it means in your browser, you can be able to write, this is the command you write. You say npx run dev. These commands, all of them can be run with this format, okay? So let me set that on WeChat as well for you guys. Starting the project, npx run dev, like that. And then, as I said, when you meet a problem, only search when you find the problem as you're going, okay? So npx, oh my god, npm run dev, like that. Actually, this should be modified to npm. We're having an error that says, okay, these variables need to be defined. Okay. In this case, they're asking us that this one, because it's a startup package, they're asking us to have I don't know if you guys know Discord. Discord is like a social media application. So for starters, because they don't want you to worry about user authentication, they're asking you to go get a key from Discord because it allows you to log in into an application using their system, right? So here, this is failing. If you were to pass this on Google, it will tell you like what the issue is saying. But in any case, if you're running any web development, you'll be facing these problems, right? When you have an error, it looks like this. Error, something, something. And then you have to find out what the problem is. This is the majority of your work if you're building a system, solving problems. Okay? So you need to get really good at solving problems and also finding out what the problem is. So for example, we're starting our project here, and then we run it, and then it's telling us like environment variable, right? This X is saying it's missing. What is missing? It's this Discord ID and this Discord secret. It is missing. Okay? More context, right? Failed to load. You can be able to take this. If you're having any errors, right? This is another good workflow that I can show you. A long time ago, we used to Google everything on Stack Overflow. But in this case, if you don't know what it is, you have AI here on your side, right? So you can just be able to paste this, and let me choose maybe a cheaper, faster model, maybe even auto like this, and then just paste like that. And then this will be able to tell you what it is. I can understand that this is saying there are some things missing here. There are some things missing here. Okay, so I just have to put those, and then I'll be good. And that's definitely what the AI will tell me as well. In our case here, for starters, because we're just beginning, we can just be able to write anything here. It won't matter because we don't want it to actually run anything. Okay? And then we should be able to at least begin, and the database to I think we're going to have also another database issue. So this is saying the same thing. Like, now I can see the issue. These things are missing, right? So you have to add them for the thing to be able to be functioning. Does that make sense? Um, I'm not sure if with the time we need to do a second class for those who want to continue from here, because I think we've gone past 5. Is that okay? I think the main thing that I really wanted to communicate today is more of the theory behind, and we've spoken about that. But I feel like now for the actual programming, maybe we might need another session. I think the 3 hours doesn't be enough for that. Is that okay? Is that fine? No. Another day. Another session. Is okay?
We can schedule it in the group.
Okay. Now we're gonna do this one in the practical programming group. It will not necessarily be in the school group anymore. Is that okay? There's the WeChat group we joined today. Yeah. And I'm gonna record that as well on YouTube so that maybe you can be able to find it if you don't have the time to join the specific exact session. Maybe that one can be online. Is that okay? Both fine, right? Yeah. It's fine? So catch up to here, right? Read anything if you need about what we talked about, get the template, and then from here we can do another session. Is that okay? Yeah, and if you have any questions before now we close, let me do questions before we go. Not every week, no. I plan to do 2 sessions. I was planning to do this one and the one for AI next week. AI for academia next week. More of like just using the tools for working on AI and also talking about how the AI works so that you can understand the best way to use it. Yeah. No programming next week, I would say. Any other questions? I think it's too much information for one day. Any questions online? Yeah.
I think next session is better just to focus only on
The programming.
part. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, today mostly was the background and also the workflow and the path you should take if you're really thinking about doing this full time. And the programming itself will need time for you to actually refine it, do it multiple times, and then have an understanding of what you're doing. Is that okay? All right. Any questions? That group for programming is just for programming. If you have any, even your own personal projects, if you want me to jump in a call with you and look at what you're doing, that's okay. All right?
That session will be online or?
No, it'll be in personal. The next session will be online. We can do, yeah, we'll do online and then we'll share in the programming group.
The one you're speaking about next week is the one you say is online.
No, the next week one is offline.
Yeah.
But the part 2 of this session is
Online.
Which is the programming one?
Yes. Yeah.
The next week is on 7th. That's the one which is related
AI
to
for academia.
That's offline. That's on the
I understand.
You are from this school or from the other campus?
No, from
Mafangshan. Okay. All right. So the next one that is scheduled with ICA is on 7th is for AI for academia, like using all these AI tools for academic work.
We'll send the notice.
Right? And now, for those who are really serious, like I've talked about programming, the theory, the path, right? Now, if you really want to like go into this and make this run, right, we're going to need a session just about that, and that one will be online. That one, I think we'll talk about it in the group and then plan properly, all right? But we've talked about so much. Get here at least. If you get here, even personal inbox, you can inbox me, all right? Okay. Yeah. All right, cool.
Thank you for bye.
If you have any programming projects, I'm mostly in the lab in GN2. If you have any programming project, you just come back to my lab and then we can
Man, I just need help here. You know, you've been talking about that thing.
Yeah.
Okay? And I don't know, I'm having a problem. I don't know if it's with downloading
Can
it
you
or
come? Can you come?
Yeah, but I saw notes.
Or you saying using notes? Yeah.
One more thing. The choice, actually, I should be fine by doing this. My choices are okay. I feel like those are very fine.
Okay. Wait. CD. Give me a minute, I'm coming, okay? I feel like some of these choices might be a bit problematic. So let me just do them again. For I want to change two things. One is the package manager. The default one that everybody's gonna have is the first one, and also for the database, it would be better we do the local one, because if we do the online one, then we haven't talked about setting up online. So it'd be good if we do like this. Use npm here, and then okay, great. So we do this. Let me just update that guide in case somebody else is following. Okay. Use these choices instead of the first.
Yeah, I'm cool. That's no problem. That's the thing I'm saying I have a problem. Maybe if I can just explain my thing from start to finish. I'm a mechanical, right? And there, my project is about optimizing the production line. So in this project, trying to optimize the production line, I'm trying to minimize the time it takes to produce one project. For instance, if you're producing this, right, there's a time to